Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Sherri Papini. Keith Papini and Sherri first met in junior high, when he was in 7th grade and she was in 8th grade. Their friendship quickly blossomed and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, over time, they lost contact with each other and went separate ways. Sherri eventually moved on and married another man in 2006, but their marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. After her divorce, Sherri found herself single once again. Unbeknownst to her, a chance encounter with Keith was on the horizon, and their reunion would rekindle the spark they had long ago. This unexpected reunion revealed the growth and maturity that time apart had brought them. They discovered how much they had missed each other and decided to give their relationship a second chance. As they started dating, their connection grew stronger with each passing day. Within a year of reuniting, Keith and Sherri realized they were meant to be together. In 2009, they got married and had 2 children and lived in Redding, California. To care for her children, Sherri left her job in telecommunications, and Keith continued working at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. Keith and Sherri Papini had what seemed like the perfect life to those around them. However, their seemingly idyllic life took a drastic turn on November 2, 2016, when Keith returned home from work to find his wife, Sherri, missing. Normally, Sherri was at home when Keith arrived, but she was nowhere to be found this time. Keith initially thought Sherri might have gone for a walk, but as the minutes ticked by with no sign of her return, his concern grew. He decided to call their children's daycare center to see if Sherri had picked up the kids. To his surprise and concern, the school secretary told him that Sherri had not been there. Keith then decided to track Sherri's phone using the Find My iPhone app. The app showed that her phone was located at the end of their driveway. Keith immediately ran outside and began searching. To his dismay, he found Sherri's phone lying on the ground, along with her headphones. What's more, he discovered strands of hair tangled in the headphones. Distraught, Keith quickly contacted the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff's office acted quickly and treated Sherri's disappearance as a serious matter from the very beginning, they bringing in the FBI to assist with the investigation. Keith is determined to find his wife and bring her home safely. To achieve this, he has asked for the public's assistance. Keith contacted the media to help spread the word about Sherri's disappearance, they sharing her story by covering every detail of her case. As a result, the public became deeply interested in Sherri's disappearance, largely due to her striking appearance and the seemingly ideal life she led. As the story gained media attention, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office started receiving numerous tips from the public. However, these information do not assist in finding Sherri. In their investigation, police examined Sherri's phone for clues. Upon reviewing the phone's contents, investigators found a heated text message exchange between Sherri and Keith from a few months earlier. This discovery raised suspicions about Keith's involvement in Sherri's disappearance. Despite these concerns, Keith cooperated with the police investigation and even volunteered to take a polygraph test to clear his name. The test results showed that Keith was telling the truth. Aside from the text message exchange between Keith and Sherri, investigators found several messages on Sherri's phone from men using fake female names. Further examination suggested that Sherri was preparing to leave Keith. On November 10, 2016, the police located one of these men and questioned him about Sherri's location. He reported meeting Sherri 5 years prior at a restaurant during a work event. Although he claimed to have no knowledge of her whereabouts, he did offer some insight into her marriage to Keith. He shared that she had confided in him about her fear of her husband, Keith, due to his violent behavior. He claimed Keith often confined Sherri to their home. The police opened an investigation into Keith's behavior to verify these allegations. However, after questioning friends and neighbors, they found no concrete evidence supporting Keith's portrayal as a violent person. Friends of the couple shared a different perspective. They described Sherri as attention-seeking and has a tendency to overreact. This new information led the police to consider that Sherri might have exaggerated or fabricated about being abused by her husband. On Thanksgiving morning, just days after Sherri went missing, police received a call for help at 4:32 a.m. The caller reported a woman on the side of I-5 who seemed to need assistance. Officers quickly are present to the scene and found a woman bound by chains and zip ties. Due to her disheveled state, it took a moment for them to identify the woman as Sherri. The officers were relieved to find Sherri alive. They carefully removed her chains and zip ties to ensure her safety. After her release, the officers took Sherri to the hospital for medical attention. It was at the hospital that the full extent of Sherri's ordeal became clear. She had multiple bruises, her hair had been cut short, and she had a burn mark on her arm. Additionally, she had a severe rash and had lost a significant amount of weight, dropping to just 87 pounds. Sherri was interviewed at Woodland Memorial Hospital while recovering, but she was too distraught to share any details without her husband present. Her husband, Keith, was allowed to stay with her during the interview. According to Sherri, she was jogging when a dark-colored SUV approached. The vehicle was driven by two women. The older woman, who had a gun, got out of the car and approached Sherri, while the younger woman stayed in the vehicle. Sherri stated she was forced into the SUV. Before getting in, Sherri left her phone, headphones, and some of her hair behind in the driveway. She intentionally left clues for Keith in case anything went wrong. During the journey in the SUV, Sherri said she drifted in and out of sleep, making it difficult to keep track of time. The women also covered Sherri's face, preventing her from seeing the direction or location she was being taken. Sherri reported that her captors, two women, told her that she was taken because a man wanted to buy her. However, the women did not provide any information about the man's identity or his location. As a result, Sherri felt unease and fear, unsure of where she was being taken or what would happen to her during her captivity. During her testimony, Sherri also claimed to have experienced physical abuse from one of the captors. She alleged that this woman physically hit her many times, causing various injuries. She stated that she was branded on her right shoulder with the word Exodus, which would reportedly make her more appealing to her buyer. Sherri's captors played Mexican mariachi music constantly, of discomfort for Sherri. Throughout her captivity, Sherendra was confined to a small room with boarded-up window. Sherri described the basic but unsanitary and uncomfortable living conditions. In the closet, where she was chained, there was a bucket for her to use for both bowel movements and urination. Approximately 3 weeks after being in captivity, Sherri heard the sound of a gunshot. After that, she never saw the older Hispanic woman again. The other captor, who had been known to remain silent, now communicated more and ordered Sherri into a car, then driven along Interstate I-5. Car suddenly came to a stop, catching Sherri off guard. Startled, she looked around, and was then instructed by kidnapper to exit the vehicle. Sherri carefully got out of the car, feeling both frightened and hopeful. Was this her chance to escape, or was she being led into a more dangerous situation? Without any clear answers, she was left with deep uncertainty. After Sherri's rescue from the side of Interstate 5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce her safe return. During the conference, authorities revealed that Sherri had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women. Unfortunately, this has sparked a wave of racism against Hispanics. In the aftermath of her abduction, Sherri began attending therapy sessions to cope with her ordeal. Fortunately, as a California resident, she became eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses state budget to help pay for victims' therapy in the aftermath of the abduction. Sherri has changed her life, giving up her outgoing personality and limiting her social interactions. She now spends most of her time indoors, instead of participating in many of the social activities she once enjoyed. The police released a composite sketch of 2 Hispanic women suspected to be involved in Sherri's abduction about a year into the investigation. However, no new information or leads were received. The police also disclosed that they found male DNA on Sherri's underwear, the same one she was wearing when she was found on the side of the I-5. Authorities confirmed that the DNA did not belong to Sherri's husband, Keith. 2 years after her abduction, the police were still unable to find a match for the male DNA on Sherri's underwear. And the case remained unresolved. In 2020, a significant development took place in the investigation of Sherri's case. The police responsible for her case applied for approval to utilize a new technology called familial DNA analysis, which involves examining DNA profiles to pinpoint possible relatives of the person who contributed the DNA. Familial DNA testing is a crucial tool in solving crimes. It works by comparing DNA evidence to the DNA of known individuals, usually family members of a suspect, to see if there's a match. To aid in the investigation, researchers use genetic markers shared among relatives to narrow down the pool of suspects. In the Sherri Papini case, the police have found new clues when they matched male DNA found on her underwear to family member James Reyes, Sherri's ex-boyfriend. This unexpected result led to numerous questions and changed the direction of the investigation. As a result, the police began to suspect Sherri's ex-boyfriend of being involved in her abduction. To investigate further, the police collected a soda bottle from James's trash and sent it to the forensic lab for DNA analysis in June 2020. The lab then compared the DNA from the soda bottle to the DNA sample found on Sherri's underwear. 1 month later, the lab confirmed that James Reyes was a match to the DNA sample discovered on Sherri's panties the day she was found. The police interviewed James at his home in Costa Mesa, California, about the disappearance of his former girlfriend, Sherri. James stated that he had dated Sherri about 10 years ago and last saw her a year after their breakup. When asked if he was involved in her kidnapping, James initially denied any involvement. However, as the interview progressed, James revealed that he was still close friends with Sherri. He said he was involved in Sherri's disappearance but didn't kidnap her. Instead, he just helped her. According to James, Sherri had contacted him about escaping her abusive husband, Keith. To help her, James arranged for a car, which was rented by one of his friends on November 2, 2016. James used that vehicle to pick up Sherri the next day. Sherri stayed in the back seat of the car during the long drive to James' house in Costa Mesa, lying down the entire time. Once they arrived, Sherri isolated herself in the bedroom for the remainder of her stay. James continued with his daily routine, while Sherri occasionally helped out by cleaning and cooking. During her stay, Sherri started dieting to lose weight. She also asked James to help her harm herself on purpose. Her requests included creating bruises by hitting herself. Sherri asked James to hit her knee with a hockey puck. At first, James was hesitant, but he eventually agreed to her requests. Furthermore, James stated that Sherri asked him to brand the word Exodus onto her right shoulder using a wood-burning tool from Hobby Lobby. James admitted to complying with this request as well. Eventually, Sherri informed James that she had decided to leave his house. Before departing, she requested that James obtain chains and zip ties. Sherri then instructed James drove her back to Redding, California. During the drive, Sherri ordered James to pull over, and he complied. She immediately exited the vehicle, and James drove away. When questioned by the police, James claimed he had no knowledge of the incident Sherri described, involving 2 Hispanic women. However, when the police visited James's house, they were startled by what they found. The layout of several rooms matched the descriptions Sherri had provided, including James' bedroom and closet, which exactly matched a drawing Sherri had created for the police. Several days later, the police met with Sherri and Keith at the police station. During the interview, the police had evidence that suggested Sherri had faked her own kidnapping, and they were prepared to confront her about it. Before revealing the truth, they asked Sherri if she wanted her husband Keith to leave the room. However, Sherri remained silent. The police decided to leave Sherri and Keith alone for a few minutes. During this time, Sherri shared a secret with Keith. Sherri told her husband that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who kidnapped her because she felt grateful to the woman for letting her go. As a result, she had no intention of pressing charges against the woman. Keith listened to his wife's explanation but became concerned and scared as her words made no sense to him. He pointed out that even if Sherri chose not to press charges, the woman would still face consequences for her actions. The police then re-entered the room and shared a crucial piece of information. They had obtained a DNA match for the male DNA found on Sherri's clothing. That DNA belongs to James Reyes, his wife's ex-boyfriend. Then, the police informed Sherri and Keith that James had passed a polygraph test, suggesting James was telling the truth. The police believed that Sherri might have faked her abduction, and they claimed to have gathered evidence supporting James' version of what happened. According to the police, they also told Sherri that they had discovered information that suggested her weight loss during her disappearance was intentional. Additionally, they believed the rash on her arms could have been caused by the cleaning products she used at James's home. The investigation into Sherri's kidnapping progressed when police discovered that she had staged the incident. The police found evidence that James had indeed inflicted the injuries on Sherri on her own accord, contradicting her claim that she hadn't seen him since their breakup years ago. Specifically, police claimed to have discovered that James had used a wooden object purchased from Hobby Lobby to brand Sherri. They also discovered that Sherri's broken nose was the result of self-inflicted injuries with a hockey stick. Despite this damning evidence, Sherri continued to deny any involvement in her disappearance. However, James provided the police with details about Sherri's disappearance that only someone with insider knowledge would know. Consequently, on March 3, 2022, Sherri was arrested by the FBI for lying to federal agents and faking her own abduction. 6 weeks later, she agreed to plead guilty to these charges as part of a plea deal with federal prosecutors. In the subsequent sentencing, Sherri's defense team requested a lenient sentence of 1 month in prison and 7 months of home detention. However, the prosecution recommended a more severe 18-month sentence. Ultimately, the court sentenced Sherri to 18 months in prison and ordered her to pay a $300,000 fine in September 2022, accepting the prosecution's recommendation. During her sentencing, the judge described she as manipulative and dishonest. At the sentencing hearing, Sherri apologized to those who had been affected by her actions and acknowledged her guilt. She took responsibility for her dishonesty and the harm it had caused to herself and others. Sherri was released from prison in August 2023 and placed in a halfway house. Her relationship with Keith ended on the day of her arrest in March 2022, when Keith learned the truth about her actions. Shortly after Sherri's guilty plea, Keith filed for divorce and sought full custody of their children. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Polly Klaas. Polly Klaas was born on January 3, 1981, in Fairfax, California. She lived with her parents, Mark and Eva, and her younger sister Annie. When Polly was very young, her parents divorced. Afterwards, Polly, her younger sister, and their mother moved to Petaluma, California. Mark has started a new relationship after he and Eva divorced, and Polly gets along well with her father's new partner. After her parents got divorced, Polly made a conscious effort to maintain a good relationship with both her mother and father, helping to keep the peace within the family. As a child, Polly was described as quiet and innocent. Although she had few friends and was generally shy, she excelled in theater. Polly actively participated in school plays, community musicals, and often secured lead roles. Her passion for theater fueled her dream of becoming a talented actress in the musical theater field. Besides, Polly also enjoys having sleepovers at friends' houses or inviting them to her house. These sleepovers are usually with her close group of friends. On October 1st, 1993, Polly invited two friends, Jillian and Kate, to her home for a sleepover. Her mother, Eva, agreed to let the girls spend the night. That evening, the three girls had dinner and spent the first few hours together without incident. When Eva started feeling unwell with a bad headache, she decided to go to bed around 9:45 p.m. and asked the girls to wake her if they needed anything. Eva later said she took 2 sleeping pills and fell asleep after 11 p.m. She was suddenly awakened by Jillian and Kate screaming. The girls frantically told Eva that Polly had been taken by a man who broke into the house. Eva immediately called the police and then checked on her other daughter, Annie. She was in the room, and she didn't seem to know what was going on. When the police arrived, they questioned Jillian and Kate. According to the girls, they had been in Polly's room playing, trying on different costumes for Halloween. It was around 11 p.m. when Polly suggested it was bedtime, and her friends concurred. And when Polly went to get the inflatable bed from her mother, she met a man standing at the door. The man held a knife and was not wearing a mask. But since we're approaching Halloween, the girls initially thought it was a joke and started laughing. However, they quickly realized the situation was not a joke at all. A man forcefully entered a house and became enraged when the 3 girls inside began to laugh. In a fit of anger, he restrained Jillian and Kate by tying their hands and feet and then demanded to know who lived in the house. Each girl replied that it was Polly. The man then proceeded to cover Jillian and Kate's heads with pillowcases and instructed them to count to 1,000. He told them that he would temporarily take Polly away, but promised to return her shortly. However, once Jillian and Kate realized the man had left the house, they tried to free themselves, which took approximately half an hour. They left the room and immediately informed Eva that Polly was missing and that a man had taken her. They reported the incident to the police, providing a brief description of the man. This allowed the officers to create a sketch of the suspect to aid in the search. Unfortunately, there was limited evidence found at the scene. A few footprints were discovered, but they all belonged to Polly, Eva, Annie, or friends who had visited the house in the days leading up to the incident. Some fabric fibers found on the carpet in Polly's room were significantly different from those in the carpet at her home. Analysis revealed that they belonged to a car's carpet. Police searched cars belonging to people the family knew but found no match, leading them to believe the fibers came from the kidnapper's car. A palm print was also found, but it couldn't be matched to anyone in the databases at the time because fingerprinting and DNA technology weren't advanced enough. However, the print was saved for possible comparison to a suspect in the future. In addition to the fibers, a piece of fabric resembling silk was found in Polly's room. It appeared to have been cut from a garment with scissors and had a unique pattern. The police believed this could be a valuable piece of evidence in the future. A hair was also found, but its origin was unknown. The DNA technology weren't developed at the time prevented analysis, making it impossible to determine who the hair belonged to. The search for Polly was one of the largest in United States history at that time, with many volunteers joining in. Around 4,000 people, including police and volunteers, searched her neighborhood, vacant lots, and nearby estates for Polly. The police attempted to find the driver who resembled the sketch, but were unsuccessful. Time was of the essence, as police hoped to find Polly within 24 hours of her disappearance, after which it would be highly unlikely to find her alive. The investigation was handed over to the FBI, who also actively worked to find Polly as soon as possible. However, as each day passes, the chances of finding her alive diminish. The police asked people who lived nearby if they saw or heard anything unusual on the night Polly was abducted. Several neighbors reported seeing a suspicious man wandering around the neighborhood. Although he looked unusual at the time, he did not cause any concern, so they did not contact the emergency services. It wasn't until police showed the neighbors the sketch of suspect they realized it was the same person. To gather more information about Polly's disappearance, police interviewed every teacher and staff member at the school she attended. They focused on whether anyone knew the suspect or had any details about Polly's situation. However, none of them had any knowledge about the incident, and everyone had an alibi for the time of the incident. Additionally, none of the school staff matched the suspect's description. In their investigation, the police went as far as comparing fibers found at Polly's home with the car mats of the school staff's vehicles. But all of them do not coincide. With each passing day, the sense of desperation among the family, the authorities, and the public grew. They feared that the kidnapper posed a threat to society. This added to the urgency for the police to solve the case. A $200,000 reward was offered for any information that could help locate Polly. The reward was sponsored by actress Winona Ryder, who also held a press conference calling on the public to pray for Polly's safe return. Also, Polly's case happened in 1993, a time when the internet was still in its early stages of development. Law enforcement agencies, including the police and the FBI, were not yet familiar with using the internet to disseminate information or search for missing persons. 3 people from California took matters into their own hands and posted information about Polly on the internet. This included a picture of Polly, a sketch of her suspected kidnapper, and a reward advertisement for any useful clues. At the time, there was no social media, but the information still managed to spread and reach approximately 25 million people in the US. FBI investigators believe that social media can play a significant role in their investigation into Polly's disappearance. Although a large number of people are following the case online, but no clues from internet users could help solve the case. Nevertheless, the campaign has attracted a large number of volunteers, and several call centers have been set up to handle the volume of calls received each day. As a result, families of other missing children reached out to the Polly family for support, hoping to find their own children too. It had been weeks since Polly's abduction, and investigators were growing increasingly frustrated. They had no new leads and had yet to identify the kidnapper, making DNA comparisons impossible. Just when things seemed bleak, Polly's father, Mark, received a phone call from a girl claiming to be Polly. She explained that she was at a hotel and that her kidnapper had temporarily left her alone, allowing her to make the call. The girl then hung up, and Mark immediately informed the police. Unfortunately, the FBI did not have tools to trace the call at the time, so they had to wait for another call, in the hoping it would give them the opportunity to trace the kidnapper's location. A few hours later, the second call came. It was the same girl who had spoken to Mark earlier. The police were able to trace this call, but were surprised to find that it did not lead to a hotel, as the girl had claimed, but rather to a residential neighborhood. When officers arrived at the house from which the call was made, they discovered it was a prank call made by a teenage girl around the same age as Polly. The girl's voice was similar to Polly's, which was the reason behind the confusion. According to her, her friends had dared her to make the call. She wasn't arrested or taken to the police station, but her parents were asked to control her behavior and advise her against making such serious and false claims in the future. On November 28, 1993, about 2 months after Polly's disappearance, a woman contacted the police to report finding 3 suspicious items on her large plot of land. Upon further investigation by the police and FBI, they discovered 3 crucial pieces of evidence: a piece of silk identical to the one found in Polly's room, a pair of ballet ties that Eva reported missing on the night of Polly's disappearance, and duct tape. This led the police to speculate that Polly was likely in the area. The FBI uncovered more information that shed light on the case. On the day Polly went missing, the same woman had reported to the police that strangers had been frequently visiting her plot of land. The property didn't have a fence around it, despite signs indicating it was private. As a result, many strangers unknowingly trespassed on the land, with the owner often encountering intruders. However, one incident stood out, especially considering it occurred on the night Polly was abducted. On that evening, a man in a car drove onto the property, but his vehicle got stuck in the mud. The nanny, who looking after the homeowner's son, was the first to see the man but was too scared to approach him. The owner also chose not to approach the man due to a fierce look in his eyes, so they decided to call the police. When the officers arrived, they questioned the man, who claimed he was unaware he was on private property and promised to leave immediately. However, he asked for help pulling his car out of the mud. The police observed that the man was visibly nervous and sweating, appearing to be under the influence of a substance. But they were unable to administer a drug test and couldn't arrest him since he wasn't being violent. Finally, the policeman helped him get the car out of the mud, and the man drove away. The man's name was Richard Allen Davis, born in 1954 in San Francisco, California. Richard's childhood was marked by violence at the hands of his parents, particularly when he was 12 years old. This led to his parents' separation, and his mother completely disowned him, stating she wanted nothing to do with her son and leaving him in the care of his father. Richard's father was highly irresponsible, often leaving the house for extended periods of time, sometimes days, and leaving Richard alone. Richard sometimes stayed with neighbors or would seek out relatives. Richard started committing crimes when he was a teenager. He started stealing, got into fights, and spent several months in a reformatory school. At the age of 17, he committed a violent robbery that almost resulted in the death of the victim. The judge offered Richard 2 options: reform school or joining the U.S. Army. Richard chose to join the Army, but he was unable to maintain good behavior. As a result, he was dishonorably discharged after serving for less than 2 years. When Richard was approximately 20 years old, he was convicted of robbery, kidnapping, and received a 15-year sentence. However, due to good behavior, he was paroled after serving just 1 year. During that time, Richard was haunted by another charge. Many of Richard's friends believed he had killed a 19-year-old woman named Marlene, despite the police determining she had left willingly. Marlene's close friends suspected Richard was the culprit responsible for her death the night they attended a party together. Nonetheless, these allegations remained unsubstantiated rumors at the time. Richard was in financial trouble, and as such, he did not have a permanent home, leaving it unknown where he actually lived. The police issued an internal warning to officers, advising them to exercise extreme caution when interacting with him. Fearing Richard might flee California or even the United States, the authorities chose not to share any information with the media. Richard was ultimately arrested on November 13, 1993. He was driving under the influence and was stopped by a police officer. A breathalyzer test was administered, which Richard failed. Richard matching the suspect's description in the Polly kidnapping case. The police carefully approached Richard and arrested him for violating his probation due to he had violated his alcohol level while driving. However, the real reason for the arrest was the kidnapping. At the police station, Richard's true identity was revealed, and he was informed that he was under arrest in connection with the Polly kidnapping case. During the interrogation, Richard initially denied the charges but ultimately confessed to the crime. Further evidence, including a palm print matching the one found at the scene and fabric fibers from his car's carpet matching those found at Polly's house, supported Richard's guilt. When questioned, Polly Kloss' friends identified Richard as the kidnapper. Moreover, an identical piece of fabric was found in Richard's car and on a piece of land of the woman who had called the police, providing additional evidence against him. The suspect eventually admitted to the crime after much evidence pointed to his guilt. Richard claimed that on the day of the incident, he had been using illegal substances with friends and was not feeling well. Despite this, he decided to commit a burglary and drove to a neighborhood where he spotted a house with an open window. He climbed in through the window, searching for valuables, and was about to leave when he encountered Polly. She was extremely frightened, and Richard made the decision to abduct her. He put Polly in the back seat of his car and drove to a secluded area, where he sexually assaulted her. After this, he got back in the driver's seat and continued driving. Eventually, Richard's car got stuck in the mud on private property, where a woman and her babysitter saw him with Polly in the back seat. The police arrived to help him, pulling the car out of the mud. Tragically, after they assisted him, Richard drove away and strangled Polly to death. He later revealed to the police the location of her body and them to begin a search. On December 4, 1993, approximately 2 months after Polly Kloss's disappearance, her body was discovered in a grave by the side of a highway, which was dug by Richard. A forensic examination was conducted and confirmed that the cause of Polly's death was strangulation, which was consistent with Richard's previous statements. The estimated date of death was roughly consistent with the day she went missing. With this evidence, Richard went on trial for kidnapping, murder, and rape. During the trial, Richard was given the opportunity to say a few words. In his statement, he apologized to Polly's family but also made the shocking accusation that her father had been sexually abusing her. According to Richard, Polly told him that her father's actions towards her were something Richard should not have done to her. This accusation angered Polly's father to the point that he became violent and was restrained by several people in the courtroom to prevent him from attacking Richard. Everyone was shocked by Richard's words, mainly because he showed no remorse for his statement, and many suspected that Polly's father had abused her. Despite no evidence to prove it, Richard was found guilty of Polly Kloss kidnapping and murder on June 18, 1996, subsequently received a death sentence in August. He attempted to appeal but was unsuccessful. In 2006, Richard was found unresponsive in his cell after overdosing on pills, but was revived and returned to prison. Richard's lawyer made an unsuccessful attempt to appeal the conviction to the Supreme Court in 2009. The Supreme Court upheld Richard's death sentence, with his attorney indicating plans to file further appeals. These ongoing appeals have led to a prolonged stay on death row. It is anticipated that once the appeals process concludes, the execution will proceed. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Georgia Williams. Georgia Williams was born on September 17, 1995, in Telford, Shropshire, England. She grew up in a close and loving family with her parents, Lynette and Steve Williams, and her older sister Scarlett. From an early age, Georgia demonstrated a kind and thoughtful nature, consistently looking for ways to help others and make those around her happy. This admirable quality eventually becomes her weakness. Despite being bullied in middle school, but Georgia's life improved in high school. She made a group of friends and became a well-liked and popular student. Her kind nature and good leadership skills helped her win the position of class monitor. She pursued her passion for helping others by joining the Air Cadets Corps, with the ultimate goal of becoming a medical officer in the Royal Air Force. At 17, Georgia started working at a local gas station, where she quickly became friends with her co-workers. One of them was Jamie Reynolds, a 22-year-old man who seemed quiet and isolated from the rest of the group. Georgia, being a kind and caring person, reached out to Jamie in friendship, wanting to help him feel less alone. Thanks to her efforts, Jamie started to fit in at work, participating in group activities and making friends with his coworkers. As time went on, Jamie developed strong feelings for Georgia, seeing her as the only person who had shown him kindness and believed in him. Feeling hopeful, Jamie started to think that maybe Georgia felt the same way about him. Emboldened by his newfound confidence, he mustered the nerve to express his true feelings to Georgia and inquired if she would be open of a romantic relationship. However, Georgia, being considerate of Jamie's feelings, let him down gently. She explained that she didn't want to ruin their friendship by getting romantically involved. Jamie seems to respect Georgia's choice and tries to maintain their friendship. However, he is actually harboring an increasingly unhealthy obsession with her. One day, while they were working together at the gas station, Jamie opened up to Georgia about his unhappiness with his life. He told her that he wanted to quit his job and pursue his true passions. Jamie had always dreamed of turning his passions into a career, and Georgia was eager to support him. One day, they started talking about his hobbies, and Jamie revealed his love for photography. Georgia saw an opportunity and encouraged Jamie to pursue it as a career. Excited about the idea, Jamie asked Georgia to help him create a professional portfolio and asked if she would be his first model. Georgia, being a good friend, agreed to help. They scheduled a photo shoot for Sunday, May 26, 2013, at Jamie's parents' house, with a few mutual friends joining in. However, as the day approached, Georgia found herself in a difficult situation. Her family was hosting a barbecue, and her grandparents, whom she hadn't seen in a long time, would be attending. Georgia thought about canceling the photo shoot at the last minute, but she didn't want to let Jamie down. She decided to keep her commitment and assured her family that she would only be a short drive away. She planned to quickly take a few photos and then return to her family's barbecue, hoping to make both her friend and family happy. On that day, Georgia got ready quickly, doing her hair and makeup, and wearing jeans and a leather jacket. Her father complimented her as she left home at 7:30 p.m., saying she looked beautiful, like Sandy from Greece. Georgia's family expected her to return home soon. However, as the hours went by and she didn't come home, her loved ones started to worry. At first, her mother wasn't too concerned, thinking Georgia was probably just busy with the photo shoot or spending time with friends. She sent a text asking when the photo shoot would end. Georgia replied, saying it had already ended and that she was with friends and might be home late. Her mother wasn't worried after getting the text, as it seemed like a typical message from Georgia, with the usual 3 kissy face emojis at the end. Georgia's mother trusted her to be responsible, which is why she wasn't worried at first. As the night went on, Georgia's parents went to bed, thinking she would be home by morning. However, when they woke up the next day and Georgia still hadn't returned, they started to feel uneasy. Georgia's mother sent her a text message at 6:30 a.m. asking where she was. But it wasn't until 7:30 a.m. that a response arrived, saying George had spent the night at a friend's house and her phone battery was running out. The message said that if George didn't respond again, it was because her phone had died. George's mother was unaware that the messages were not written by her daughter. On May 27th, George's parents thought she would come home after a music festival. They expected her to come home the next morning because she was excited about her first driving lesson. As the night went on and George didn't come home, her parents became more and more anxious. They stayed up late waiting for her, but there was no sign of her. They contacted relatives and friends to see if anyone had heard from George, but no one had seen or heard from her in days. This makes them even more insecure and unsure of what is going on. When Georgia failed to return home the next morning for her scheduled driving lesson, her family quickly reported her missing to the police. They gave the police all the information they had, but they only knew that Georgia had been to a photo shoot at Jamie Reynolds' home and nothing about her whereabouts after that. The police started investigating and focused on Jamie Reynolds. What they found out about him was alarming and raised concerns for Georgia's safety. It turns out that in 2008, Jamie got into trouble with the law for assaulting and attempting to strangle a teenager. Despite the seriousness of the incident, he was let off with a warning and not charged. When the police discovered this, they suspected Jamie even more and considered him the main suspect in Georgia's disappearance. They went to his home, but no one answered. They broke in. They searched the premises but couldn't find Jamie, so prompting a large-scale manhunt to track him down. After conducting a thorough investigation at the petrol station, it was clear that none of Jamie and Georgia's co-workers had seen them. Their absence from work was unusual and raised concerns, as it was out of character for both of them. Although Jamie's parents were away on vacation, but they had already given the authorities key details about Jamie's van, such as its registration information. The police in Shropshire quickly shared this information with police agencies nationwide, asking them to be on the lookout for the van. Soon, authorities located Jamie in Glasgow, Scotland, which is 428 miles away from his home. His abrupt departure from the country, which came without warning, raised concerns and hinted at a potential problem. On May 30th, police in Glasgow arrested Jamie Reynolds at a local hotel due to suspicions of kidnapping Georgia. They immediately questioned him about Georgia's location, but Jamie claimed he didn't know where she was and provided no useful information to the investigators. He was then taken to Shropshire for more questioning. Meanwhile, Georgia's family and friends waited nervously for news, but what they heard about the investigation was deeply upsetting. The lack of progress was crushing, making their pain even worse. With Jamie in custody as the main suspect, the police searched his home for evidence. During the search, they found a camera with an SD card, but their hopes of finding important clues were crushed when they discovered that all the files had been deleted. The camera was sent to the police station for forensic analysis, where experts worked to recover the deleted files. Eventually, they managed to retrieve the data, revealed a shocking secret to the investigation. Among the recovered files are several images taken on the day Georgia went missing, providing a haunting look at she's final moments. The initial photos showed Georgia in normal poses at the start of the photo shoot, confirming she was at Jamie's residence that day. Although she appeared content and cooperative, it was clear Georgia had no idea about Jamie's sinister intentions. Sadly, she unintentionally entered a hazardous situation without realizing the risks, which ultimately led to her tragic death. As authorities went through the images, the tone became increasingly dark and unsettling. Subsequent photos reveal a series of harrowing incidents, depicting a distressed Georgia stripped of her clothes, standing weakly on a red recycling bin. Her hands appear to be tied behind her back with a rope hanging ominously above her. The footage captured Jamie Reynolds' horrific act. He filmed Georgia's final moments, showing her desperate struggle for breath. He later committed heinous acts of necrophilia, violating her lifeless body in various rooms of the house. Jamie's parents' bed was where he further compounded the horror. He took hundreds of additional photos showing Georgia in degrading positions, documenting his depravity. He stripped her of her jewelry, keeping them as trophies of his horrific crime. The police conducted a thorough search of Jamie's home and found a large collection of explicit photographs and videos, including content that depicted extreme violence, sexual assault, and murder. It was discovered that Jamie was not only in possession of these materials, but also actively involved in creating content that featured violent acts. Jamie's parents were alerted to their son's disturbing interests and immediately ended their vacation to meet with authorities. They revealed that Jamie had been exposed to violent and explicit content from the age of 14. It is possible that he was exposed to such content even earlier. Although his parents tried to intervene by blocking access to certain websites, Jamie found a way to circumvent their efforts. At the age of 14, he contacted the internet provider and set up his own private Wi-Fi connection, which allowed him to continue accessing the blocked websites without his parents' knowledge. When Jamie's parents first found out he was watching these videos, they became worried and contacted the police and Child Protective Services. However, the authorities said they couldn't take any action because watching such content wasn't against the law. As the police looked into the matter further, they found a set of notebooks containing 40 separate stories written by Jamie. These stories were centered around harming, sexually assaulting, and murdering women. Additionally, investigators discovered that Jamie had searched social media platforms, printed and marked images of young girls with nooses around their necks. One of the stories, titled "Georgia Williams Surprised," has a very similar plot to the incidents that led to Georgia's death. Authorities believe this narrative may have been a pre-planned scenario, intended to be carried out from the start. Jamie began writing this narrative in January and finished it just 3 weeks before the murder. Despite being questioned, Jamie refused to reveal the location of Georgia's body, insisting he was innocent. As a result, investigators had to painstakingly reconstruct Jamie's movements from the Monday morning after Georgia's murder. They started by reviewing surveillance footage of Jamie refueling his vehicle at a petrol station. Unbeknownst to them at the time, Georgia's body was hidden in the back of Jamie's van. After refueling, Jamie drove 60 miles to a movie theater, leaving Georgia's body in the van parked in the theater's lot. He then went inside to watch a movie. However, police lost track of Jamie after he left the theater and issued a public appeal for help finding him. The appeal was successful, with people reporting sightings of Jamie's van near the New York G Mountain Pass. The area, with its dense woods and muddy terrain, was where Jamie tried to evade capture. Locals remembered Jamie in his van, especially after it got stuck in the mud, and Good Samaritans helped him get it out. Police followed up on this lead and searched the wooded area where Jamie was spotted. Unfortunately, they found Georgia's naked body in this secluded spot. Georgia's body was returned to Shropshire after being recovered. A post-mortem examination revealed she died from asphyxiation due to a ligature around her neck. Forensic analysis also showed bruising on her back, indicating Jamie had used his knee to press her down. Initially, Jamie denied any involvement in Georgia's murder, but on the first day of his trial in December 2013, he suddenly stood up and pleaded guilty to all charges. During the trial, Georgia's father gave a heartfelt address to the court. They had to endure the pain for a long time as they witnessed their daughter's body lying motionless in the hospital's rest house, a traumatic experience that haunted both him and his wife. The trial also uncovered Jamie's previous run-ins with the law. In 2008, he received a warning from a judge for keeping a 1-year-old girl captive in his home. A disturbing incident foreshadowing Georgia's tragic death. In 2011, Jamie was criticized for recklessly backing his car into a girl's vehicle. This incident occurred after the girl had turned down his romantic advances. Although the case was eventually closed, Judge Mr. Justice Wilkie expressed serious concerns about Jamie's behavior, calling him a sexual deviant and warning about his potential to become a dangerous serial offender. As a result, Jamie received a whole life term, a sentence typically reserved for the most severe crimes, meaning he would spend the rest of his life in prison without parole. At the time, Jamie was the 46th person to receive this sentence and the youngest person in history to be given a whole life term. During sentencing, Judge Justice Wilkie highlighted the extreme suffering Georgia endured, emphasizing the torturous nature of her experience. Jamie's obsession with violent and sadistic pornography had led to a horrific display of control over his victim, ultimately resulting in her tragic death. Jamie Reynolds hung his head in shame as Georgia's parents and sister listened to the disturbing details of her death and the abuse she suffered at his hands. The courtroom was extremely tense as the jury saw gruesome images of Georgia's final moments, causing her family to leave in distress. In 2014, Jamie tried to appeal his life sentence but was unsuccessful. A review of the case the following year criticized police officers, children's services, and mental health professionals for their handling of Jamie before Georgia's murder. The review found that these agencies failed to work together properly, despite Jamie having come to the attention of law enforcement 5 years earlier for attempting to strangle another girl. Georgia's parents were deeply saddened by the report, regretting the missed chances to intervene and prevent their daughter's death. They stated that they cried when they read about the agency's failures, as it was clear that Jamie was likely to commit murder. They believed that Georgia's death could have been prevented. Outside the courtroom, Georgia's father shared the family's overwhelming sadness, stating that no sentence could ever satisfy them because it wouldn't bring Georgia back to life. He emphasized that their loss was irreparable and that Jamie, despite his lengthy prison sentence, still had the one thing he took from their daughter, life. He noted that what to cause them grief is that Jamie, even while serving a life sentence, still gets to live. Jamie Reynolds remains in prison to this day. Georgia's mother, Lynette, later wrote a book titled Our Georgia, in which she shared the family's traumatic experiences. The book highlights the failures of the legal system that allowed Jamie, a violent film enthusiast, to remain at large and eventually commit murder. This book is a heartfelt tribute to Georgia and provides an insight into the devastating aftermath of her tragic passing. Georgia's death caused immense pain to those who loved her, leaving a huge gap that can never be filled. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of the Parente family. William Michael Parente was born on July 20, 1949, in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. His parents, Willie and Rulon Parente, raised him with values rooted in their family's history of law enforcement. His father, a New York trooper, played a significant role in shaping his upbringing. As an only child, William received his parents' undivided attention. He spent summers enjoying the sun with his family in Long Beach. William pursued his education at Brooklyn College and Brooklyn Law School, thanks in part to the financial support of his uncle, Anthony J. Russo. William worked in his uncle's Manhattan law office on the Avenue of the Americas. There, he built a reputation as a thoughtful lawyer and dedication to his family. William was known for his demeanor, courteous which extended to everyone. He worked diligently for long hours, but made sure not to overwork himself. Unlike many of his peers, he refrained from using profanity or engaging in post-work gatherings for drinks. His disciplined lifestyle and commitment to kindness set him apart in the legal community. Even on difficult days, William maintained his composure and treated everyone with respect. In 1977, after being admitted to the New York bar, William married Betty Mazzarella. He began his career at a prestigious Wall Street law firm but made a significant change in 1988. When Betty became pregnant with their first child, William decided to start his own private practice. This change happened around the same time the family moved to Garden City, New York, an affluent community in Nassau County, Long Island. Despite living in the suburbs, the William family remained connected to their Brooklyn roots. They regularly returned to their old neighborhood to enjoy local delicacies, reconnect with old friends, visit their mother, and relive cherished childhood memories. By the time he was 60, William Parente had become an experienced estate and tax attorney. He ran his practice from an office in a Queens shopping center. His wife, Betty Mazzarella, 58, dedicated her time to taking care of their home and organizing charity fundraisers in their local community. Betty was actively involved in church activities, which were an integral part of their neighborhood's social fabric. The couple had 2 daughters, Stephanie and Catherine. Stephanie, the elder daughter, was 19 years old and a sophomore at Loyola College, studying speech pathology with plans to pursue dentistry in the future. Her friendly nature made her well liked by her classmates and teachers. She also maintained close relationships with her friends back home in Garden City. Their younger daughter, Catherine, showed remarkable talent at just 11 years old, earning her admiration from teachers and staff at Garden City Middle School. Her exceptional abilities indicated a promising future ahead. In the later stages of his legal career, William became involved in what he called bridge loans. He acted as a financial intermediary, similar to a bank, allegedly using assets from investment portfolios under his management to finance these loans. When an investor asked for their money back, William Parente was unable to return the funds or explain why he couldn't. On April 15, 2009, William, along with his wife Betty and youngest daughter Catherine, took a trip to visit their eldest daughter Stephanie in Towson, planning to surprise her. They booked room 1029 at the Sharon Hotel, near the Talon Town Center Mall, with a reservation until the 19th. When they arrived, Stephanie's friend was surprised, given that classes had just resumed after the Easter break and Stephanie was busy preparing for a chemistry exam. The visit was unexpected, especially since the parents had already planned to visit on Friday the 17th to discuss Stephanie's study abroad plans in England. Despite the initial surprise, the visit seemed like a normal family reunion. However, what took place that day remains unclear. Based on the evidence, here is what happened. Betty Mazzarella Parente was the first victim. She was brutally assaulted and suffocated in bed on Sunday morning. Later, Catherine, the youngest daughter, met a similar fate, dying from the same violence as her mother. Catherine's body was placed beside her mother's. On Sunday afternoon, Stephanie arrived at the hotel after leaving her campus and tragically met the same demise as her mother and younger sister. Her body was laid beside theirs on the bed. None of the victims showed signs of struggle. No evidence of drugging or physical restraint was found. William Parente carefully planned the annihilation of his family. On that somber Sunday, around midnight, one of Stephanie's close friends and roommates grew worried about her absence from their dorm room. After hours of worrying, the roommate called the hotel room phone to reach Stephanie. The roommate knew Stephanie planned to return to the dorm to study for final exams, so they were surprised when William Parente, Stephanie's father, answered the call. William explained that Stephanie was staying at the hotel with family. The roommate accepted this excuse and ended the call, unaware that Stephanie was already dead. Later, the roommate thought back on the conversation and remembered that William's tone seemed unusual. On Monday morning, William Parente ended his life by using a knife he had bought at a nearby mall. He inflicted fatal injuries on himself in the hotel bathroom. When the family failed to check out, hotel staff became concerned. School Loyola College also raised concerns about Stephanie's unexplained absence from classes, especially since it was a crucial time for her final exams. The college contacted the hotel, requesting a welfare check on Stephanie and her family. At 3 p.m., a housekeeper tried to enter their 10th floor room but found the door locked and received no response. The housekeeper alerted other staff, and a hotel manager entered the room. The manager found William Parente's lifeless body in the bathroom, having taken his own life with a knife. The manager quickly called emergency services and continued to investigate. As he entered the room further, he found 3 bodies carefully arranged on one of the beds. The victims were Betty Mazzarella and her 2 daughters, Stephanie and Catherine. The Baltimore County Police were immediately called to the scene, and all other guests on the 10th floor were relocated as part of the investigation. The police also took the family's Mercedes-Benz SUV from the hotel parking lot. After investigating, they determined that William Parente had committed a murder-suicide on that Sunday. And the police found that the causes of death were asphyxiation and blunt force trauma. They believe that Betty and Catherine were the first victims, followed by Stephanie. The police think that one of William's last interactions was with Stephanie's boyfriend, who tried to call Stephanie around midnight. However, Stephanie had already been killed by her father by then. Shortly after the call, William likely went to the bathroom and took his own life using a knife he had bought earlier from the mall. It is believed that William Parente's decision to kill his family and then commit suicide may have stemmed from an investigation into his possible involvement in a major fraud. William Parente was accused of being part of a Ponzi scheme, a type of investment scam where money from new investors is used to pay existing ones, often resulting in huge financial losses. Investors have been scammed of around $20 million, with one investor claiming a loss of $450,000. Investigations showed that William had issued bounced checks totaling $245,000 to investors, leading to further complaints to the New York Attorney General's office. After William Parente's death, some investors came forward with losses totaling millions of dollars. A colleague of William's made a poignant observation: financial losses can be recovered, but the loss of human life is irreparable. Friends and family have struggled to overcome their feelings of grief following the horrific incident. A memorial service was held at Loyola College on Monday night to honor Stephanie's memory. The family William Parente home, once full of life, became a somber space filled with tributes such as flowers and candlelit vigils. A funeral service was held at St. Joseph's Church in Garden City to commemorate Betty and her daughters. According to reports, Catherine's middle school classmates were transported by bus to attend the service. Stephanie's college peers made a significant effort to join, driving from Talon and arriving as early as 4 a.m. for the morning ceremony. The family was laid to rest together at St. Charles Cemetery in East Farmingdale, New York. In contrast, William Parente received a separate, private funeral service at a different location. He was cremated, but the location of his ashes was not publicly disclosed. The horrific actions of this merciless perpetrator have caused immense distress for the victims and their loved ones. Hey everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery: the case of Vincent Brothers. Vincent Brothers was born on May 30, 1962, in Long Island, New York. From a young age, he was known for his charisma, reliability, and diligence. He also served in the Marine Corps Reserves. After graduating from Norfolk State University, Vincent moved to California in the mid-1980s to pursue further education and eventually earned a master's degree. Despite having a successful career as a school administrator, Vincent's personal life was marred by tumultuous relationships. His two previous marriages ended in divorce. In 1988, while working at California State University in Bakersfield, Vincent had a daughter with his girlfriend. He took his girlfriend to court to establish paternity and was eventually awarded custody and visitation rights. Initially required to pay $350 per month in child support, this amount was increased to $771 in 2003. That same year, Vincent was convicted of wife abuse and received a 6-day jail sentence and probation. In 1992, Vincent married for the second time, but this marriage also ended in divorce in 1996 due to accusations of intimidation and physical abuse by his second wife. While serving as the assistant principal at Emerson High School, Vincent was accused of sexually harassing a colleague. The woman claimed that Vincent assaulted her at his home and took her phone to prevent her from calling the police. When she tried to report the incident to the police, she said police discouraged her from pursuing charges because she was afraid of Vincent's reputation. The harassment continued at school, with Vincent allegedly touching her inappropriately. The woman eventually resigned from her job as a teacher, citing an unfriendly work environment. The school district investigated Vincent due to his increasingly threatening behavior and threatening phone calls. Despite Vincent denying the allegations and having no disciplinary record, the school district transferred him to another school as a precaution. Vincent then began working at John C. Fremont Elementary School in Bakersfield, California, where he also became famous and respected. Vincent was especially known for ensuring the safety of students by taking them home after school. While teaching at Fremont Elementary School, Vincent met Joni Harper, the school's security supervisor and basketball manager. Vincent and Joni began dating and eventually married after the birth of their first child, Marcus. Their family grew with the arrival of their second child, Lindsay, in 2000. However, Vincent's infidelity caused him and Joni to divorce in September 2001. 2 years later, Vincent and Joni remarried in secret, and their third child, Marshall, was born 4 months later. Joni eventually opened up to her friends about the problems in her marriage. Unlike before, she expressed her fear that Vincent might harm her. However, to those around them, Vincent's family appeared happy and actively involved in the community, often attending local events and maintaining good relationships with others. From the outside, Joni and Vincent's marriage seemed stable. Joni continued to work as a basketball manager, pursuing her passion. However, no one expected that the tragic events hidden behind the family's happy exterior would soon emerge. 3 months before the tragic event, Vincent had moved out of the house due to frequent arguments with his mother-in-law, Ernestine. On July 6, 2003, Joni attended a church service with her 3 children, Marcus, Lindsay, and 6-week-old Marshall, as well as her mother, Ernestine. The family had lunch at Black Angus after the ceremony, then returned home for a nap. As was their custom, Joni and the children stayed in one bedroom, while Ernestine stayed in another room in the house. Tragically, the family was attacked in their home. The killer easily entered the house without signs of forced entry and shot Joni twice in the head while she was in the bedroom. Lindsay was also shot in the back. The noise alerted Ernestine, causing her to quickly arm herself with a .38 revolver and move toward the hallway to investigate. Unfortunately, she was killed before she could defend herself. The attacker shot Ernestine twice in the face, causing her to collapse in the hallway outside her bedroom. The attacker then entered the room and shot Marcus, followed by a fatal shot to the baby's back. Each shot was aimed very carefully. Instead of fleeing the scene immediately, the attacker went to the kitchen to get a knife and then returned to the bedroom. There, the attacker stabbed the victims multiple times in the back. On July 8, 2003, Kelsey Spann, Joni's best friend, became worried when she had not heard from Joni, Ernestine, and Joni's children since they went to church the previous Sunday. Kelsey decided to go to Joni's house to check on them using the key Joni had given her. When she tried to unlock the door, she found it difficult to open due to an obstacle. She then went to the back of the house and found an unlocked sliding glass door, which was unusual. Upon entering the house, Kelsey discovered Joni, her mother Ernestine, and Marcus, Lindsay, and Marshall, all dead. Kelsey immediately contacted authorities at 7 a.m. They arrived at the scene and discovered 5 family members brutally murdered. The family's peaceful home, located in a quiet neighborhood, became the scene of a horrific crime. The police investigation concluded that the family had been tragically killed on Sunday afternoon as they returned from church. Before leaving the scene, the perpetrator covered the bodies in the bedroom with blankets and pillows taken from other rooms. Detectives identified Joni as the primary target due to the severity of her injuries, suggesting the attacker had been extremely angry. Police were concerned about Vincent's safety and discovered he had been in Ohio. Detective Watts traveled to North Carolina, where Vincent was visiting his mother with his brother Melvin. When North Carolina police met with Vincent, they found him severely traumatized and unable to speak coherently, which did not provide many details about the investigation. Vincent's behavior was inconsistent with that of a murderer, and because he had been on the other side of the country when the murder occurred, police initially ruled him out as a suspect. He also provided receipts showing purchases made around the time of the tragedy, confirming that he had not been in Bakersfield, California, where the incident occurred. However, Detective Watts still doubted Vincent's innocence. Notably, Vincent never asked how his wife and children had died, which aroused suspicion. On July 11, 2003, Vincent had returned to Los Angeles without attending their family's memorial service, but Vincent had attended their funeral 5 days later. As the investigation continued, it was discovered that Vincent had moved out of his family home in April 2003. Additionally, his wife, Joni, had been planning to divorce him again and had sought child support. Authorities also discovered that Vincent had had a history of violence against women, which had led them to take a closer look at his alibi. Upon further investigation, surveillance video from the store's checkout counters had shown that Melvin, not Vincent, had made the purchase at that time. When confronted, Melvin revealed that Vincent had told him to make these purchases in Vincent's name. Despite their efforts, police were unable to find any witnesses who had seen Vincent between the evening of July 4th and the evening of July 7th. Both Melvin and his family insisted they had not seen Vincent during this time. Although there was no direct evidence linking Vincent to the murder, police discovered he had some suspicious activities. Vincent had rented a car when he had arrived in Columbus, Ohio, and he had stayed at his brother's house. Police suspected Vincent had flown to Columbus on July 2, 2003 to visit family, then returned to Bakersfield on July 4th, where the tragic incident had occurred on July 6th. He was supposed to return to Ohio on July 7th and had arrived late that evening. Law enforcement had conducted a thorough inspection of the Dodge vehicle, paying special attention to its radiator and air filter. To help identify insects found in the car, investigators had enlisted the expertise of Dr. Lynn Kimsey from the Bohart Museum of Entomology at the University of California, Davis. Dr. Kimsey carefully had analyzed the insects and identified more than 100 species, including several species found only in the western region beyond the Rocky Mountains. The presence of some insects suggested that Vincent had moved at night. By carefully analyzing the insects, Dr. Kimsey had been able to plot a path that showed the car had traveled west from Ohio. Investigators later had tracked down the 5 previous car renters and confirmed that none of them had driven the car to California or near the Rocky Mountains. Police also had examined photographic evidence and found the end of a rubber glove in the laundry room. DNA testing showed a match. It belonged to none other than Vincent Brothers. Detective Watts had discovered that Vincent had been planning to leave town and had begun selling his assets, including putting his house on the market. As a result, Vincent had been arrested on April 30, 2004 and charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. The trial began in 2007, with prosecutor Lisa Green leading the case. The prosecution argued that Vincent's motive for the murder had been financial, suggesting he had acted out of fear of having to pay child support due to his impending divorce from Joni. The prosecution portrayed Vincent as a serial adulterer who often had disappeared for long periods of time and who could become violent. To support their case, the prosecution called several witnesses, including Dr. Lynn Kimsey, who testified that the insects found in the Dodge were consistent with insects commonly found along Interstate 70. This testimony was further supported by evidence showing 5,424 miles had been driven from July 2 to July 11 in accordance with the prosecution's statement. However, when Melvin had appeared in court, he tried to change his previous testimony, claiming that he had lied to the police about Vincent giving him a credit card to use. In response, the defense presented an expert on high-speed driving, who argued that maintaining an average speed of 70 miles per hour during the trip from Ohio to California had been extremely difficult. The defense also presented its pathologists, who testified that the murders could have occurred as late as Monday morning, July 7, 2003. The defense also had presented interrogation tapes to prove that Melvin had been pressured by police to change his statement. Additionally, they called a witness who claimed to have seen a car accident involving Vincent on Sunday morning, in which a boy on a bicycle had collided with Vincent's rental car at an intersection. Although the incident had not been reported to the police due to the lack of damage or injuries, the prosecution attempted to verify the story. Vincent had taken it upon himself to defend himself. He had strongly denied all accusations about his married life and had firmly denied the accusation of murdering his family. Throughout his testimony, Vincent had become emotional and had shed tears several times. The prosecution had called Carla Tuya, principal of Franklin School, as a witness. She had testified about her past relationship with Vincent, which had begun in 1996 when his son was born and had ended in 2002 when she had decided to end it. Carla revealed a shocking secret that she and Vincent had been intimate just weeks before the family tragedy, directly contradicting Vincent's previous denials about everything. This admission had damaged Vincent's claim to fidelity to his family. The prosecution had argued that the crime had been carefully planned in advance. Thanks to knowing the family's Sunday habits, the murderer had gained an advantage and had had the opportunity to strike. The perpetrator had taken advantage of this and had waited until the whole family was asleep, then had used the spare key to enter the house through the sliding glass door and had killed each family member. On May 15, 2017, Vincent had been found guilty of 5 counts of first-degree murder, making him eligible for the death penalty. The jury had reached this decision after hearing testimony from 137 witnesses and deliberating for nearly 2 days. After the verdict, Vincent had been removed from the courtroom and had been returned to the Luro detention facility under tight security. Then, on September 27, 2007, Durr County Superior Court Judge Michael Bush had sentenced Vincent Brothers to death by lethal injection. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Carrie Leah Farver. Carrie Leah Farver was born on November 30, 1974 in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. After going through many relationships, she raised her son Maxwell alone. Carrie Leah loved her son very much. Carrie Leah spent a month in bed due to severe depression. Her mother, Nancy Rainey, helped take care of her son Maxwell. The complicated relationship with Maxwell's father along with the difficult living conditions caused Carrie Leah, a young woman of 20 years old, to fall into an unstable psychological state. Doctors diagnosed Carrie Leah with bipolar disorder. People with bipolar disorder often have 2 opposite psychological states. One moment they can feel overly excited, energetic and friendly, but then they can fall into a state of depression, frustration and helplessness. This disease causes them a lot of difficulties in daily life. However, in the early 2000s, Carrie Leah's doctor found an effective treatment that allowed Carrie Leah to live a normal life. In the fall of 2012, Carrie Leah received a lucrative job offer in nearby Omaha, an opportunity she couldn't refuse. Carrie Leah accepted the offer. However, her son, Maxwell, was in middle school and didn't want to change his familiar surroundings, so Maxwell decided to stay with his grandmother in Macedonia. One day in November 2012, Carrie Leah met Dave Kropa at the auto repair shop where he worked. When Dave looked at Carrie Leah's Ford Explorer, he realized that he really liked this woman. Carrie Leah was showing Dave something inside the car, and they stood close to each other, and there was a little tension. Not long after, Dave and Carrie Leah went on a date. Carrie Leah went to Dave's house. A while later, a woman named Liz called Dave a lot and texted him. Then Liz went to Dave's house to pick up something he had left for her. Dave explained to Carrie Leah that Liz Gollier was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Liz, born in 1975 in Michigan, initially told Dave that she was not looking for a serious relationship because she was a mother and needed to spend most of her time with her children. In Dave and Liz's relationship, they had few topics to talk about, and their relationship was mainly physical. After a while, Liz began to worry about what Dave was doing when she was not around, as well as who he was seeing. Dave often reminded her that they were in an open relationship and that she should not worry. He also insisted that Liz was free to date other men. However, Liz was not happy with this and began to bother Dave more and more. Liz also felt jealous of Dave's children and their mother, Amy, because she could not understand the close relationship they had after the breakup. Eventually, Liz's actions upset Dave, and he decided to break up with her. Carrie Leah sympathized with Dave, as everyone had relationships in the past, and Carrie Leah did not let that affect their relationship, but Liz was clearly upset to see a strange woman in Dave's house. Liz, feeling that Dave was increasingly distancing himself from her, wrote text messages, emails, and called Dave. However, Dave would not stop seeing Carrie Leah or anyone else because of Liz. 2 weeks after moving to her new job, Carrie Leah began dating Dave. Carrie Leah and Dave began spending more time together. Dave felt comfortable with Carrie Leah around. Carrie Leah said that she was not looking for a serious relationship, but just wanted to enjoy the good times together. In December 2015, Liz was shot. Liz probably guessed who it was. Luckily, the wound was not fatal. Liz thought, "This can't go on any longer, I have to do something." At 9:45 a.m. at work, Dave suddenly received a text message from Carrie Leah. In the message, Carrie Leah expressed her desire to live with Dave forever. The content of the message made Dave feel confused and surprised, because he did not understand the reason for Carrie Leah's sudden change. Because before, they had discussed and agreed that both of them would not rush into a binding relationship. Dave gently replied to Carrie Leah that he was not ready for this big change. Carrie Leah's response was very unpleasant. When Dave returned to the apartment, he found that all of Carrie Leah's belongings that she had brought were gone. This made him think that Carrie Leah had left him. On the same day, Carrie Leah deleted him from her Facebook friend list. Although it seemed like everything was over, it was not. Dave began receiving a series of text messages and emails from Carrie Leah, which were full of curses and threats to ruin Dave's life. The messages were numerous and all of them were rude. In addition, Carrie Leah did not show up for work. The strange messages from Carrie Leah were not only sent to Dave, but also to her mother and 15-year-old son. In May 2013, Carrie Leah posted a lengthy post on her personal Facebook page, in which she wrote, she had answered enough questions to prove to everyone that she had had enough. You can either believe that she was a girl, or leave her alone. She quit her volunteer job and she was fed up with people giving her a hard time. She just didn't want to go home right now. She was a grown woman, and if she wanted to leave home, she had every right to do so. Sorry for hurting everyone. Carrie Leah then remained absent for a while. Her mother realized something was wrong when Carrie Leah missed her own birthday, Max's birthday, and other family celebrations. Finally, when her father passed away. After a while, Liz Gollier began receiving messages from Carrie Leah. In those messages, Carrie Leah criticized and insulted Liz, even threatened Liz to stay away from Dave. To understand Carrie Leah's strange behavior, Liz contacted Dave. He said he was also in a similar situation. Carrie Leah sent him many messages and emails, in which Carrie Leah accused Dave of all kinds of wrongdoing, called him a liar, and promised to avenge the pain he had caused Carrie Leah. Gradually, the messages from Carrie Leah became more threatening, with confusing content and grammatical errors. Carrie Leah's mother insists that her daughter is not a hot-tempered person and has always been very careful in writing letters and documents. Carrie Leah pays attention to spelling and presentation. Is her bipolar disorder relapsing and developing into something more serious? After Carrie Leah's confusing actions, all the evidence points to Carrie Leah having psychological difficulties. Liz and Dave often receive hundreds of text messages and emails, even when they are together. Their phones constantly buzz with messages, which makes them both uncomfortable. Although they continue to date, Dave feels uncomfortable around Liz. She becomes more and more demanding, despite always insisting that Liz is fine with their no-strings-attached relationship. In January 2013, Dave found Carrie Leah's car in his front yard. Dave called the police and reported the incident. The police came to check the car and found no suspicious signs. The police then turned the car over to Carrie Lee's parents. Carrie Leah continued to text Dave and Liz. Carrie Leah even started sending pictures of Dave's children and threatening to harm them. As time went on, Carrie Leah continued to stalk them. Liz became increasingly jealous, made Dave angry and tired of the situation, and finally decided to end the relationship with Liz. In August 2013, Liz reported a fire at her house, which killed all of her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz told the police that Carrie Leah had repeatedly threatened her through text messages and emails. So she suspected Carrie Leah of starting the fire. The police seized Dave and Liz's cell phones. Someone damaged Dave's auto repair shop and threw a brick through the window. Dave felt threatened, so he bought a gun to protect himself. After a while, Amy Flora, Dave's ex-wife, also began receiving threatening messages from Carrie Leah, because Dave often spent time with the children and met Amy. The police became suspicious for reasons that were hard to understand. Dave had only dated Carrie Leah for less than 2 weeks, but had been following him and his ex-girlfriends for 3 years. Meanwhile, Carrie Lee's family had not seen her for 3 years, and were trying to find her, using every method possible. In 2015, these efforts paid off. Police officers Ryan Avis and Jim Doty volunteered to investigate Carrie Leah Farver's disappearance. However, they found no evidence that Carrie Leah was alive. It was unusual for an adult to pack up and leave without spending any money. No one had seen her, and no one had heard her voice. This was very strange. With the assistance of Anthony Kawa, digital forensics administrator at the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office, police analyzed the contents of Dave and Liz's phones. In 2013, Anthony reported that Carrie Leah Farver had sent more than 50,000 text messages and 15,000 emails to Dave over the course of 3 years. Anthony also said that those impersonating Carrie Leah were becoming more sophisticated in their operations, trying to hide their IP addresses and real identities. It seems that someone knew what they were doing and had access to various computer programs. In December 2015, Liz Gollier contacted the police to report that she had been shot in the leg outside her home. She determined that the attacker was not Carrie Leah but Dave's ex-wife Amy Flora. Furthermore, Dave had a missing gun that Amy may have taken. It is possible that Amy was behind Carrie Lee's disappearance. A clue in the investigation indicates that people associated with Dave were being harassed. It is possible that Amy, having had a difficult life after breaking up with Dave, the father of her children, decided to take revenge and eliminate all rivals, and the relationship between Dave and Amy was still quite good. The children together brought them closer, and Carrie Leah clearly hindered their reunion. The police quickly questioned Amy, but surprisingly, Amy had an alibi. She was not at Liz's house when the shooting occurred, and this was confirmed by several people. Because there was no hard evidence, Amy was not arrested. Experts processed the data from Liz's cell phone and discovered important information. Anthony discovered fake email addresses with different variations of the name Carrie Leah. In addition, Anthony found an application that Carrie Leah used to schedule messages to be sent at certain times. This could explain why Liz and Dave received messages from Carrie Leah at the same time. Anthony began to suspect Liz Gollier. The answer became clear when Liz's fingerprints were compared to those found on the steering wheel of Carrie Lee's car, and they matched perfectly. The culprit was revealed. The killer has been here for years without anyone knowing. The case needs to be solved as soon as possible. The police want to catch Liz red-handed, so they plan to frame Liz. The police decide to make up a story about believing Liz, with Amy still being the main suspect. Liz takes the bait. Liz is extremely happy because she can finally get rid of another rival who is hindering Liz's happiness with Dave. Soon after, Liz gives the police an email that she says is from Amy. In the email, Amy admits to kidnapping Carrie Leah and includes many details about the incident. The confession in the email states that Carrie Leah was stabbed in the stomach or chest before being dumped. In addition, the email contains information about Carrie Lee's car and home address that no one else knows. The police say that Liz has provided information that only the real culprit would know. The email messages clearly indicated that the crime had taken place in a car, so the police decided to re-examine Carrie Lee's car. After the police removed the upholstery and fabric, they discovered blood stains belonging to Carrie Leah, who had gone missing. Liz had created fake messages on Carrie Lee's behalf without raising suspicion. According to the investigation, Liz Gollier dated both Dave and a man named Garrett. Garrett lived at the IP address identified as the source of the messages under Carrie Lee's name. When talking to Garrett, the police discovered that he had been in a long-term relationship with Shanana Gollier, known to many as Liz. Garrett had invited Liz to live with his children after a fire. However, their relationship became complicated and strained when they lived together, with Garrett having to care for Liz's children while she was away. Garrett was surprised to hear from police that Liz had spent 40 to 50 hours a week impersonating the missing woman Carrie Leah. Liz's room was a mess, but no significant evidence was found. However, police did find several cell phones and electronic devices in the last room she stayed in. In late December 2016, Shanana Gollier, known as Liz, was charged with first-degree murder. Liz's attorney, James Martin Davis, hopes the case will fail because Carrie Lee's body has not been found, the murder weapon has not been found, and Liz has not pleaded guilty. There is no evidence to prove that Carrie Leah is dead. The defense team decides to hold a new trial, with Liz's guilt decided by a judge. Electronic evidence was presented along with physical evidence. The prosecution asserted that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie Lee's car was consistent with Liz's confession. Police analyzed the memory card that Liz had been using when Carrie Leah went missing. The memory card was on Dave's tablet. Police recovered deleted images, including a photo of a human foot with a Chinese symbol tattoo. The foot belonged to a man who had died many years earlier. There was also a tattoo that Carrie Lee's mother identified as Carrie Leah. The photo was used to confirm Liz's guilt. The judge found Shanana Gollier, also known as Liz, guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced her to life in prison without parole. Additionally, Liz was convicted of arson in August 2013, a fire that not only destroyed her home but also killed her pet. Liz was sentenced to an additional 20 years in prison. She is currently incarcerated at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women and maintains her innocence. Carrie Lee's son Maxwell has followed in his mother's footsteps by becoming a computer programmer. Maxwell graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering and data science and is married. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Nicole Peets. Nicole Peets was born on February 26, 1973 in King County, Washington. Nicole was the only child in her family and her parents divorced when she was in school. During her high school years, Nicole was an active, sociable, athletic girl who was well-liked by many people. She had many friends and enjoyed field trips to the countryside. After graduating from high school, Nicole studied public relations at Western Washington College. At the same time, Nicole was still actively involved in sports. Nicole took a coaching position at a local sports club. Nicole quickly gained the respect of her colleagues, and Nicole attracted many customers to her classes. After graduating from college, Nicole decided to continue her education to improve her management skills. She found a job at a large mobile communications company. Nicole's personality is friendly, sociable, and willing to help people, but few people know that inside she is suffering from a lot of pain and suffering. Nicole's teenage years were severely affected by alcoholism. The divorce of her parents was a huge shock to her fragile psyche. Her rebellious nature and bad friends influenced her, and she began drinking. All of this led to a serious alcoholism that lasted for many years and completely undermined Nicole's physical and mental health. At that time, Nicole's mother, Gail, worked as a flight attendant and was often away from home because of her busy work. Therefore, Gail did not realize the change in Nicole. Nicole lives with her elderly grandmother, who also did not realize that her granddaughter regularly drank alcohol. When the truth was revealed, alcoholism had caused severe damage to Nicole. To help Nicole, Gail, her mother, accompanied Nicole to support her. Gail accompanied Nicole to therapy and alcoholism meetings, helping Nicole open up and overcome her cravings. At that time, Nicole's mother Gail had remarried, and Gail's new husband, Robert, was supportive of his stepdaughter, loving Nicole like his own daughter and believing that Nicole could overcome her alcoholism. Nicole took treatment very seriously. She did not miss a single meeting and quickly overcame her addiction. However, alcohol caused many health problems for Nicole. She had serious problems with her pancreas that required surgery. In addition, her alcoholism at a young age had seriously affected her fertility, making it impossible for Nicole to have children. In the mid-1990s, when Nicole was recovering from her addiction and living sober again, Nicole met David. At the time, Nicole had just gotten a job at a sports club, and David was a regular at the club. David was a tall, handsome young man. David was immediately attracted to Nicole, an attractive trainer, and David began to show interest in her. David, who was 4 years younger than Nicole, soon developed a relationship that lasted almost 8 years, and it was not until 2002 that the couple decided to marry. David and Nicole had a simple wedding in Hawaii, inviting only their closest friends. After their marriage, the newlyweds bought their own house and began to settle down in the town of Linwood, Washington. Nicole was a friendly and outgoing young woman who quickly made friends and built good relationships with her neighbors. Nicole loved animals and had several dogs. Because she could not have children, Nicole devoted all her love to these pets. David and Nicole were a perfect couple. They often went for walks with their dogs and always had happy smiles on their faces. Nicole loved to cook, and she was a very good cook. Nicole often treated her husband to delicious meals cooked by herself. In 2006, just a few days before her 33rd birthday, Nicole mysteriously disappeared. That day, for the first time, she did not attend an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, where she was the leader and inspiration for the group. Nicole also did not come to work, making her colleagues even more worried. In the evening, her mother, Gail, felt very worried when she could not contact Nicole all day, which had never happened before. Gail called Nicole's husband, David, to find out what was going on. However, David could not contact Nicole either. David said that David and Nicole had argued a little the day before, so when he tried calling Nicole the next day and got no response, he thought that Nicole was still angry with him. David did not rush to find Nicole right away, but waited until the evening to ask for her forgiveness. However, Nicole still did not come home that night. Nicole's family tried to contact her by phone but received no response. They decided to go to the police to report the incident. However, the police did not immediately accept their report because Nicole was an adult and had only been missing for less than a day. It was not until the evening of the second day after Nicole went missing that the police began searching. When Nicole did not appear and her phone was unreachable, the police decided to start searching from where she was last seen, which was her and David's house. However, after investigating, the police did not find any clues or unusual signs that Nicole had been kidnapped or that something had happened to her in that house. And Nicole's car was also missing with her, suggesting that she may have left on her own and did not want to return. Her mother Gail and stepfather Robert did not wait for the police to wait the required time and began the search themselves. They appealed to all concerned through social media to help in the search and share any relevant information about Nicole's location. Nicole's father and mother also took the first flight to Linwood, where they began searching for Nicole themselves, handing out flyers with her photo and asking people who knew her. The police searched for Nicole and her car. They tried to determine the route the car had taken on the day Nicole went missing. But there were no clues. The next morning a man was jogging when he took a shortcut through an area that was very sparsely populated. As he passed through that area, he noticed something strange in the bushes. As he got closer, he realized it was the severely mutilated body of a naked woman. He immediately called the police and reported the incident. The police quickly arrived at the scene. At the scene was the body of a young woman without any clothes on. Based on the number of bruises and scratches, the victim had been brutally beaten. The cause of death was asphyxiation due to strangulation with bare hands. The police suspected that the body was Nicole Peets, who had been missing for several days. When Nicole's mother, Gail, went to the morgue to identify the body, Gail fainted when she saw the body, and her husband, Robert, was also very sad. As for Nicole's husband, David, he did not show any signs of grief. This made everyone around David feel a little suspicious of his reaction. The police continued to search for Nicole's car, hoping to find traces of the killer in the car. Information about the missing car was widely publicized in the media, along with a call for people to contact the police if they saw the car. Some time later, a gray Volkswagen Polo was found in a parking lot on the outskirts of town. The security guard there discovered the car when he realized that it had been left there for a long time. At the time, he did not know that the car was involved in this serious murder. The police took the car for inspection and examined it to look for evidence and clues to help track down the criminal. However, after the inspection, they found no traces, except for the fingerprints and DNA traces of Nicole and her husband David. Without finding any concrete evidence, the police returned the car to David. The truth is that Nicole was brutally murdered, but the motive for the crime remains unclear. In addition, the carjacking theory is unlikely, as the car was abandoned shortly after on the other side of town. Nicole Peets' case remains unsolved after nearly a year of investigation. There have been no new leads in the search for the perpetrator. No one saw the suspect leave his car in the parking lot because it was not crowded and there were no surveillance cameras in the area. What is suspicious is that Nicole's case has been kept secret. Information about the investigation and new evidence has not been disclosed to the family. Nicole's relatives have not been fully updated, only receiving small details. Nicole's bank card was used at a gas station after she went missing. Although the police have collected images from the cameras, they have not yet disclosed the results of the investigation. When Nicole's case did not progress and the perpetrator was still at large, Nicole's parents decided to conduct an investigation themselves. They hired a private investigator to gather information, verify some suspicions, and offer a reward for anyone who could provide useful information. The reward was initially $10,000 and later increased to $35,000, but no new leads were found. David initially showed great interest in investigating Nicole's disappearance for the first 6 months. However, after that time, he began to distance himself and had little contact with his in-laws, and David eventually remarried and had children of his own. The news of David's remarriage and children of his own came as a huge shock to Nicole's mother, Gail, because Nicole was unable to have children and was often blamed by David. A grief-stricken Gail repeatedly hinted that the culprit might be her son-in-law. 6 years later, Nicole's case took an unexpected turn. David was arrested as the prime suspect in the case. David did not expect that he himself would be the focus of this investigation. Previously, David had changed his residence and lost contact with Nicole's family, so he thought that the case was over and no one was looking for him. However, David was very surprised when the police raided and arrested him. At that time, David even declared his innocence and was willing to take a lie detector test, but he failed the test. As for the police, they suspected David from the beginning, but lacked concrete evidence. In order to arrest David, the police gathered a lot of evidence to ensure that he was responsible for the crime. In fact, David himself probably thought that he had committed the crime perfectly and would never be discovered. A video from the gas station provided an important clue. Footage of the moment a man paid with Nicole's card showed that the man looked similar to David. Although the man was wearing a hat and sunglasses, making identification more difficult, the footage was a key clue in the case. Police also discovered that Nicole was not wearing her wedding ring. Nicole never left the house without it. Initially, police thought the ring had been stolen with other items, but the box containing the ring was later found on a dressing table in Nicole's home. Police discovered a mouth guard in Nicole's mouth during the autopsy. This was a device Nicole had been prescribed shortly before the tragedy, as she suffered from uncontrollable spasms of her chewing muscles due to anxiety, which led to worn enamel and chipped teeth. The presence of this device suggested that Nicole may have been murdered while she was still asleep in her bed. It is possible that David had forgotten that his wife was using a mouth guard because she had only recently started using it. In addition, the police examined the traces left in Nicole's car. Only David's and Nicole's fingerprints were found in the car. No traces of anyone else were found, suggesting that there was no third person involved in the murder. The investigation also shed light on Nicole and David's family situation at the time. David did not hold any permanent jobs and preferred to spend his time in bars and clubs, where David spent all of Nicole's earnings on alcohol and other women. The family was facing serious financial problems, and the situation became worse over time. Nicole tried to convince David to change his lifestyle and attend alcohol rehabilitation meetings to help David get back on track. However, David's response was indifferent and insulting. David had affairs with many women. Nicole's mother Gail knew about the serious problems in Nicole's family and tried to convince Nicole to leave David. However, Nicole did not want to do so because she loved David and hoped he would change. After Nicole's death, her husband David quickly received a large insurance payout and started a new relationship. Before that, David had been having an affair with a girl named Jane for several months. David often spent time with her at bars and clubs when Nicole was busy working or studying. Before Nicole's birthday, David brought his mistress home, where they were caught by Nicole. This incident became the cause of an argument in the family. Nicole told her mother about the incident, and a few days later, she mysteriously disappeared. Because Gail knew everything, she suspected David from the beginning. However, the police said that the evidence collected was too little to arrest the suspect. The case was kept secret and the family was never heard from again. When David received a large insurance payout after Nicole's death, he spent the money with his mistress, Jane. David appeared in court in September 2013 for his crimes. David received the maximum sentence possible under the laws of the state where the case was tried. David served 18 years in prison. However, in 2025, he could be eligible for parole after serving 2/3 of his sentence. Crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Kimberly Antonakis. Kimberly Antonakis was born in 1974 in New York, USA. She was the only child in her family. Although she grew up in love and wealth, her father, Thomas, founded his own computer company. When Kimberly was young, her parents divorced. Kimberly left to live with her mother, and she still kept in touch with her father. Her father Thomas spent weekends taking Kimberly out and spending all his free time with her. When Kimberly's mother found a new man and decided to move to Florida, she was faced with a difficult choice: to stay with her mother or her father. Since she did not want to leave her familiar environment, Kimberly decided to live with her father Thomas. Kim began living with Thomas. Kimberly grew up to be a well-behaved and sociable child. Over the years, Kimberly became a beautiful and humorous girl. In 1994, Kimberly began attending the College of Staten Island. At that time, she informed her father that she felt she was old enough to live on her own. Kimberly's father, Thomas, was worried about this decision but still praised her and decided not to object. Instead, Thomas promised to ensure that Kimberly had a safe place of her own. Her father Thomas bought an apartment for Kimberly in a wealthy area of the city. He also installed an alarm system for the apartment to ensure Kimberly's safety. To avoid having to park far from home, Thomas bought a parking space in the garage across the street. He also bought Kimberly a cell phone and a pager so they could stay in touch regularly. Kimberly works as an accountant at a company. She lives a normal life like other students, often participating in entertainment activities and parties. Although her father Thomas repeatedly asked her to return to live with him, Kimberly insisted on being independent. In early 1995, Kimberly's best friend Liz Pace's house was being renovated. Liz, along with her boyfriend Joshua Torres and their young son, came to Kimberly's house to ask for temporary accommodation. Out of kindness, Kimberly agreed to let Liz Pace's family stay. One day, Kimberly and Liz decided to go to a party. They got their makeup done, their hair done, and their outfits picked out. Afterwards, they had a great time and danced at the party. When the party was over, Kimberly drove Liz home in her 1994 white Honda Accord. However, Kimberly did not go up to the apartment with Liz because she had unfinished business. The two girls hugged and said goodbye. Liz returned to the apartment first. The next morning, when Kimberly did not show up for work, her coworkers contacted her father, Thomas, to inform him that Kimberly had not shown up for work. Kimberly's absence was unusual because she was always on time. Thomas was also unable to reach his daughter on her cell phone, which made him feel worried and had a bad feeling. Thomas decided to contact Kimberly's friends. However, no one had any information about where she had gone after leaving the party early in the morning of March 1st. When Thomas did not hear from her friends, Thomas decided to go to the police to report the incident. The police thought that Kimberly might have stayed at a friend's house overnight and would return soon, so they advised him to wait at least 24 hours. However, Thomas was not satisfied. He decided to conduct an investigation himself to find Kimberly. After learning of Kimberly's disappearance, Kimberly's mother met with a psychic after being introduced by a friend. Upon seeing Kimberly's photo, the psychic said that she was alive, but very weak and dehydrated. She also said that Kimberly had been kidnapped by acquaintances and that Kimberly had tried to escape several times. She added that the danger came from several people and that one of them had a name that started with the letter J, and that this person was apparently the leader of the gang. Thomas, Kimberly's father, went to the places his daughter frequented and talked to many people, but did not get any important information. Thomas went to Kimberly's apartment and garage to check. When entering Kimberly's apartment, Thomas noticed a bright object lying on the floor near the wall. It turned out to be a small gold earring. Thomas remembered that he had given Kimberly this pair of earrings. Thomas put the earring in his pocket. After checking, Kimberly was not in the apartment either. Thomas only met Kimberly's best friend Liz and her boyfriend Joshua Torres and their 2-year-old child. Thomas knew about Kimberly letting Liz's family stay temporarily. But Thomas did not support this decision. When Thomas talked about Kimberly's situation, Liz's family was surprised and worried about Kimberly's disappearance. Joshua reported that he was looking for Kimberly and volunteered to help. Thomas then went to the police station a second time and insisted that they conduct a search. The police agreed to help him and began an investigation. The police began to investigate the date of Kimberly's disappearance on February 28th. It was found that Kimberly went to college in the morning, then went to work. After work, Kimberly went home and had dinner. She then attended a party with Liz and returned home around 4 a.m. Kimberly then went to the parking lot, but the reason she was there at such an early hour is still unclear. Kimberly's bank account was also investigated. The police discovered that Kimberly had last used her bank card the evening before she went missing. The police assumed that Kimberly had been kidnapped. Due to the lack of concrete evidence, the police looked into the information that Kimberly's mother had received from the psychic. Witness interviews were then conducted. The first people interviewed were Liz and Joshua. The police discovered that a total of 65 calls had been made from Kimberly's phone on the morning of March 1st. This surprised the police because of the large number of calls. However, Joshua explained that he had called all of his friends and acquaintances to find out where Kimberly had gone and why she had not stayed home overnight. Joshua said that he considered Kimberly to be like a sister to him. Thanks to Liz's testimony, the police were able to identify the clothes that Kimberly was wearing. A portrait of her has been drawn and will be released to help in the search. In addition, the police have also noticed some distinctive tattoos on Kimberly's body. One of them is a scorpion, which corresponds to her zodiac sign. The other tattoo is located on her waist and represents the infinity sign in the form of two naked people parallel to each other. A search for the missing car has been launched. The police have checked all scrap yards and other places where the car could be dismantled for parts or sold. However, this search has not yielded any positive results. The police have advised Thomas to pay attention to letters and phone calls he receives, as it is possible that his daughter's kidnappers will contact Thomas and offer a ransom. At around 2 a.m. on March 4th, the emergency services received a report of a fire. A large abandoned house was on fire at 86 Woodhaven Avenue in Queens. Fire crews were called in to put out the fire. When the fire was finally extinguished, firefighters found a charred body in the basement of the building. Forensic experts revealed that the deceased was a young woman between the ages of 20 and 25. Some of her long black hair was still on her head. There were also traces of tape. The woman's legs were tied tightly, and her hands were tied behind her back. However, the worst part was that she was still alive when the fire broke out, as evidenced by her lungs filled with smoke. In fact, the young woman had been brutally burned alive. Police suspect that the body may be that of Kimberly, who had gone missing. However, dental records need to be examined to confirm the identity. At the same time, experts have also analyzed the ashes to determine the victim's identity. When the autopsy was done, experts found no other traces besides the body. However, they found tattoos that matched the description of the missing woman. Records from the dental clinic also confirmed that this was how Kimberly Antonakis' body was found. A witness to the fire reported that he often walked his dog. However, the pet had been behaving strangely every time it passed the house. After the fire and the discovery of the body, it was discovered what had attracted the dog's attention. Kimberly tried to free herself and call for help. The dog had heard sounds coming from the basement thanks to its sensitive hearing, while humans cannot perceive it. When the police questioned the homeowner, it turned out that he had put the house up for sale and had been monitoring its condition through letters and receipts. However, this man had not checked the basement, only the house from the outside. The police decided to question Joshua again because they still had many unanswered questions about him. Notably, they also noticed an interesting coincidence that his name started with the letter J. This time, Joshua revealed to them about a friend who had not been contacted on the day Kimberly went missing. It was a young Russian man nicknamed Psycho who had a romantic relationship with Kimberly. The police decided to verify the information about this person and learned that Psycho was a Russian citizen who moved to the United States as a child, and that he later joined a gang and repeatedly broke the law. Thus, a suspicious suspect appeared and was soon arrested. During the interrogation, Psycho said that he knew about Kimberly's death. His reaction shocked the police because Psycho insisted that he had nothing to do with the crime, but also showed deep sorrow. It seems he is experiencing real emotions. After investigation, Psycho's alibi was confirmed. Once again, the investigation hit a dead end. Kimberly's family decided to seek help from a psychic once again. This time, the psychic said she saw 4 people involved in the case. She also said that the kidnappers wanted to contact the family but were unable to do so. The abduction initially showed no signs of a tragic ending. Thomas then announced a $10,000 reward for anyone who could provide information leading to the arrest of the perpetrators. Thomas could not forget the psychic's words. He began to think about what she had said about the kidnappers wanting to contact the family. He wondered what that meant and what was stopping them from doing so. When he returned home, Thomas remembered a small detail from the day Kimberly went missing. Thomas had listened to all the answering machine recordings because he hoped Kimberly would contact him. However, there was no voicemail except for 2 blank messages. When he turned them on, he heard nothing, just silence on the other end of the phone. Thomas mistook them for a technical malfunction or a communication problem. 5 days after Kimberly's body was discovered, the police found her car. It was parked in a quiet part of town, near the crime scene. The police hoped to find fingerprints in the car, but unfortunately the car had been washed. The only traces left in the car were a few strands of Kimberly's hair and an earring. During this time, Thomas was implicated in a local mafia hit. Some members of Thomas's crew even blamed him for their daughter's death, as if Thomas's dark actions had caused Kimberly's troubles. However, Thomas denied any involvement. The police investigated this information through their own channels but found no evidence to confirm it. Thomas did not appear to have had anything to do with the incident and continued his business openly. In July 1995, a young man was arrested by police at a New York City home for burglary. However, during questioning, he provided information related to Kimberly's case. The detainee claimed that he had heard from an acquaintance that his friends had kidnapped and then burned the girl alive. When the police learned that the man was Joshua Torres, who lived in Kimberly's apartment and had been involved in the search for her, they decided to take a closer look at Joshua Torres. Joshua was asked to come in for questioning and he denied any involvement in the incident. However, during a lengthy conversation, he made a confession. Joshua said that if he had really been the kidnapper, he would have fed Kimberly. This intrigued the police because there was no information given that Kimberly had died of hunger, thirst, or cold. Only the police knew this information. The police needed more evidence to clear up the case. After investigating, they discovered that Joshua Torres had a criminal record. Furthermore, he had no job and was living off Liz. Meanwhile, Liz worked to support both of them. Joshua took care of the child and had free time to secretly plan the crime. Joshua followed Kimberly and learned her habits, and kidnapped Kimberly and hid her in an abandoned house. But surprisingly, Joshua did not ask for ransom. During the investigation, the calls Joshua made that morning were analyzed. The results showed that Joshua had lied when he said he called Kimberly's friends and acquaintances. But when checked, most of the phone numbers were from random people who had nothing to do with Kimberly. When checking Joshua's pager data, the police discovered that Joshua had sent several strange messages on March 1st. These evidences gradually closed the circle around Joshua Torres. Finally, the police had a solid lead to arrest Joshua. When the police told Joshua that they no longer considered Kimberly's ex-boyfriend a suspect, Joshua changed his story. Joshua said that he suspected his friends of murdering Kimberly. Joshua confessed to assisting in the kidnapping. Joshua said he did not think Joshua's accomplices would decide to kill Kimberly. According to Joshua, they only wanted to demand ransom and release Kimberly, but the plan failed. When the kidnappers could not contact Thomas, even recorded a ransom message. However, for some reason, the recording was not saved on the answering machine. The kidnappers were angry that Thomas did not respond. The kidnappers were scared because the psychic said that the suspect's name began with the letter J. This information was released to the media and broadcast on TV. After speaking with the police, Joshua was released on bail and then disappeared. At the same time, Joshua's accuser, Jose, was shot in the back of the head while he was with his wife. Jose's wife later admitted to the police that her husband did not trust Joshua, used a tape recorder when talking to Joshua, and wanted to expose him. Police were able to establish details of the kidnapping and the crime through pager messages and statements from the suspects. The case involved 4 suspects: Joshua Torres, Julio Negrin, another man named Jose Negrin, and Nicholas Brett. It is worth noting that Julio had dated Kimberly and even intended to marry her. However, Kimberly rejected his proposal. Nicholas had just been released from prison before the kidnapping took place thanks to a bond from his mother. Nicholas had planned the incident while serving a prison sentence for serious crimes. Joshua had a criminal record dating back to his youth, including kidnapping and illegal use of weapons. A kidnapping had taken place, in which Joshua was the mastermind. Joshua directed the actions of the kidnapping group. When Kimberly returned from a party, the group of men attacked her in the parking lot. They had apparently been watching and waiting for Kimberly to be alone. To control Kimberly, they used guns to threaten Kimberly and force her to be quiet. They then tied Kimberly's hands and covered her mouth, eyes, and ears with duct tape. The group then put Kimberly in the trunk of their car and drove her to an abandoned house. There, they took Kimberly into the basement and tied her to a chair. They also took off Kimberly's shoes to prevent her from making noise by tapping her feet. The kidnappers told Kimberly that her father owed money and that they would release her when the money was paid. One of the kidnappers, Julio, was assigned to take care of her, bringing her food and water twice a day and keeping her warm. However, Julio left the house because he was afraid of the consequences. So, for 3 days, Kimberly had no food, no water, and was freezing. Immediately after kidnapping Kimberly, the kidnappers notified Joshua, who then demanded a ransom of $775,000 via an audio message. Joshua then called Thomas and left 2 empty audio messages. Therefore, Thomas ignored these calls. The kidnappers were waiting for a message from Thomas, but they did not understand why Thomas did not contact them. During this time, Kimberly was left alone and fainted several times due to dehydration, but Kimberly still managed to survive. The kidnappers did not receive the ransom and were afraid of being caught, so they decided to release Kimberly. When they went down to the basement, they found Kimberly unconscious. They thought Kimberly was dead and decided to get rid of all the evidence, including the hostage. The police knew that Joshua had directed the actions of his accomplices from inside the house, so Liz did not know that Joshua had kidnapped Kimberly. At the trial, Liz said that after being questioned, Joshua came to her and confessed everything. Joshua then beat her and threatened to kill her, before fleeing. Some time after the massacre, the police investigated Jose. He was also suspected of being involved in Kimberly's murder, but there was no direct evidence. Therefore, the police decided to take statements from the kidnappers. When questioning Joshua, he denied all involvement in the case. However, Julio decided to cooperate and gave an honest statement about the incident. Information from Julio allowed Joshua's role in the case to be determined, and Joshua was charged with Kimberly's murder. Therefore, Joshua, Julio and Nicholas were charged with related crimes such as murder, kidnapping and vandalism. At the trial, after more than 10 hours of debate, Joshua was finally sentenced to life in prison for 58 years, the same sentence that Nicholas Brett also received. Julio Negrin was convicted of complicity and sentenced to 2 to 6 years in prison after the incident. Kimberly's father, Thomas, was pleased with the court's decision, because Thomas did not want criminals to be sentenced to death. In his eyes, the death penalty was not the most severe punishment. Nicholas experienced abuse and assault in prison many times, and after only 2 years of incarceration, Nicholas died of AIDS. Meanwhile, Julio was released after 2 years after completing his sentence. However, Joshua is still serving a longer sentence and cannot be released until 2053 at the earliest, if he is still alive at that time. In 2005, Thomas died of cancer. His family believes that Kimberly's death caused Thomas a lot of stress, and that cancer was part of that. The life of Kimberly Antonakos, a beautiful girl, ended suddenly. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Channon Starbuck. Channon was born on April 19, 1969, in Anderson, Indiana. She was the youngest child in her family and grew up with 2 older brothers. However, her life changed dramatically when her parents divorced and remarried, giving her more siblings. From a young age, Channon dreamed of having a large and loving family of her own. She often participated in church activities and had a deep faith, which reinforced her dream. Channon grew up in a simple and friendly environment. She had a passion for painting and won many awards. When she was 20, she met Clay Starbuck, a 25-year-old man. They met at a party in Florida, where Channon had moved with her family when she was a child. Clay Starbuck, originally from Alaska, came to Florida during his vacation. During their first meeting, Channon learned a lot about Clay, including that he had attended a diesel mechanic school in Colorado after high school. He then returned home to work on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and was financially stable. However, Channon also learned that Clay was married and had 2 children from that marriage. Despite this, she was not discouraged by his complicated past. Instead, she saw it as a positive thing, believing that it gave him valuable experience for his married life. After getting married, Channon and Clay moved in together. In the new place, Channon had to overcome many difficulties related to the environment and weather, but she eventually adapted and settled down. However, married life was not as perfect as Channon had planned. Channon and Clay were often apart because of Clay's work, but their love helped her overcome her loneliness and wait for the day they could reunite. During that time, she cared for Clay's children from his previous marriage and had more children. In 1996, the Starbucks family welcomed their son Austin, followed by his brother Blake 3 years later. When their daughter Logan was born, the family was even more excited. However, Logan was soon diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, adding to the challenges of family life. Channon had to deal with Logan's illness and try to support her daughter. She became a more caring and nurturing mother to her children. She spent time on health care, education, and community activities. But while she focused on raising her family, she did not realize that her husband was having an affair at work. As time passed, the Starbuck family continued to grow, and Channon welcomed another daughter, Serena. Despite the hardships of life, she still tried to keep her family happy. But her husband's secret eventually came to light, and it would change her life forever. In 2000, Channon filed for divorce after experiencing a great shock and feeling deeply betrayed. However, she still had feelings for Clay and decided to move to Arizona to start a new life. This attempt failed because she still loved Clay. When Clay contacted her and begged her to come back, Channon believed that he had repented and decided to give him a second chance. In 2001, Channon and Clay welcomed their fifth child, Marshall. However, Marshall's birth created new disagreements. Even an official remarriage in 2006 could not save their broken relationship. After the remarriage, the family moved to Deer Park in Spokane County, Washington. Clay continued to work at his previous job, which led to him being away from home often. Channon had to manage her family and children on her own. However, suspicion continued to poison their marriage, which was affected by the long separations and breakups that occurred during their relationship. Finally, in 2010, Channon and Clay divorced for good. When she turned 40, Channon decided to rebuild her life once again. She still hoped that she could experience the joy of love. She was also determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Even when Clay was seriously injured, she chose not to get back together with him. Instead, she chose to support her ex-husband and provide help when needed. In February 2011, Clay quit his job and decided to settle down permanently in Deer Park. This brought him closer to his children and also closer to Channon. However, he still hoped that Channon would come back to him, but Channon did not share the same views. After finding freedom, Channon enjoyed her new life. Austin and Blake then moved in with their father, and they were happy to be away from their mother's constant supervision. Channon found a part-time job and enrolled in a dental assistant course after her divorce. She had to take care of her family and provide for her children, especially when her ex-husband stopped paying child support due to illness. However, she still had another man to support her in case of emergency. Her children often stayed with this man every Wednesday and on the second and fourth weekends of the month. After completing the course and receiving her certificate, Channon was proud and began to pursue a new dream. She created a profile on a dating website, hoping to meet a man who was worthy and could help her forget her past. She still regretted spending so many years with Clay, a man who did not appreciate her. However, one morning in December 2011, her dream was suddenly ended. On December 2, 2011, the police were notified that Channon was unreachable. Her ex-husband, Clay Starbuck, was the first to report. He reported that he had not been able to contact his ex-wife since December 1 around 3 p.m. Channon had texted her daughter that she could not pick them up from school because she was not feeling well and asked her father to pick them up. However, his phone was turned off, so he did not know about her text. The two children, Marshall and Serena, were tired and hungry. As a result, Logan, 15, decided to call his brother and ask him to drive them to their father's house, which was a few blocks away. When they arrived, Austin said he had not been able to contact his mother either. She may have turned off her phone to rest and recover. Austin took the children to Clay's house. Clay was not expecting them but was very happy to see his children again. After the divorce, the older children lived with him, while the three youngest children lived with their mother. So the father decided to enjoy his time with his children and not bother Channon. On December 2, Clay drove the children to school and went to Channon's house. However, the front door was locked and the blinds were drawn. Since he did not have a spare key, he could not enter the house. Clay then sent a text message saying that if Channon did not show up by 7 p.m., he would contact law enforcement. Time passed without Clay receiving a response from Channon, so he went to the police and reported the situation. Two sheriffs went to the address provided but did not see anything suspicious and returned. The sheriff suggested waiting another day, and if she had not contacted him by then, he should return. Frustrated, Clay went home and waited for news. The next day, Clay went to the police station again. This time, the police told him that he was not the only one reported missing. A friend and Channon's mother were also unable to contact her. This did not fit her personality. This time, the police took a more serious approach to the case. Many of Channon's relatives began to worry. After receiving the necessary permission, the police returned to Channon's house to investigate. When they arrived, the police broke the lock and entered. Initially, they saw no signs of forced entry or robbery. Everything seemed to be in its place. However, when they entered Channon's bedroom, they discovered an unexpected detail: a broken statue. Then came the horrifying scenes. Channon, 42, was found lying on her back on the floor of her bedroom in a provocative pose. On her stomach was an erotic massage tool. She had hoped for a better future, but fate did not give her the chance to fulfill her dream. Channon's body was covered in bruises and scratches. The medical examiner's report showed that some of the injuries on her body were caused by a stun gun. There was also evidence that her body had been moved. Channon's cause of death was strangulation. It was the detective's job to figure out Channon's last hours and find the culprit. The police realized that Channon Starbuck had not only disappeared but had also been brutally murdered. Her room looked as if it had been turned upside down. The bed was unmade, the blankets and sheets were missing, and the mattress cover was stained red. Channon's cell phone and diary were on the dresser. Forensic experts focused on this room and examined all surfaces for fingerprints. Some surfaces had been wiped clean, but they found 12 latent fingerprints on the massager and the bathroom mirror. They also found many other traces in common areas for DNA analysis. Experts took samples from under Channon's fingernails on her face and neck. Detectives suspect that Channon was killed after she left the bathroom, then placed on the bed, and finally dragged to the floor. It is worth noting that the removed bed sheets were found in the washing machine, possibly intended to destroy evidence. The detectives needed to gather information about Channon and her lifestyle. So, after the ex-husband calmed down, they questioned him. Clay explained that he and his ex-wife had an arrangement regarding child pickup and drop-off. Every morning, he picked up the younger kids and took them to school, and she picked them up after school. Clay said that on the morning of December 1st, his car broke down a few blocks from home. So he texted Channon, asking her to take the kids to school. He then went home to wait for the car to warm up, thinking that would help it start. Around 11 a.m., he tried to restart the car but was unsuccessful. He gave up and went back inside to take a nap. During that time, his cell phone battery died. To back up his claim, he showed his correspondence with his ex-wife. At first, everything made sense. Furthermore, Clay was very cooperative, handing over his cell phone, DNA sample, and fingerprints. He also confessed that he was worried about Channon because the divorce had made her more vulnerable. In addition, he shared that because she was single, Channon had registered on a dating website and had many admirers. According to Clay, it is possible that Channon had several lovers at the same time. He believes that one of them may have caused her death. However, he could not name them specifically due to a lack of information. During the conversation, Clay sobbed. He explained that accepting the death of his ex-lover was very difficult. After taking his statement, the police let Clay go home. He was faced with informing his children about Channon's death. The case involving Channon Starbuck's death has attracted public attention. Investigators interviewed the Starbucks neighbors, focusing on details, especially reports of strange people and vehicles appearing outside her home in recent weeks. An autopsy was performed, and the report found that Starbucks suffered chest injuries consistent with the use of a stun gun. She also suffered 10 broken ribs. The injuries to her head and body were severe and likely caused by a blunt object. Because of the appearance of the injuries, it was difficult to determine the exact time of death. Scratch marks on her body indicated that she had been moved after she was killed. The medical examiner's report indicated that a soft object was used to strangle her, possibly a hand, a towel, or a sheet. A key clue in the case came from the body samples collected, including the DNA of a man, suggesting that the suspect may have been a close acquaintance of hers. Channon's family hopes the police will quickly find the culprit. Channon's ex-husband, Clay Starbuck, has cooperated fully with the investigation. He underwent a physical examination to look for any signs of injury on his body, but none were found. As detectives speculated that the culprit may have been injured during the struggle, there was no evidence of that. Channon's two sons, Austin, 21, and Blake, 18, were also examined. Austin had old cuts on his hands, but he explained that these cuts were from his job at a window factory. In conversations with the two brothers, detectives established some important facts. They learned that their mother often dated men after the divorce, which made them unhappy. The brothers also said they had seen intimate photos on their mother's laptop, which led them to suspect that their mother may have been murdered by a lover. However, it was clear that they both loved their mother and were deeply saddened by her passing. Nonetheless, they did not agree with the changes in her life. In a later interview, Clay was more specific. He said Channon caused discord in the family when he was away on business. She often met other men, and he even suspected that Marshall might not be his son. However, he still loved Marshall like his own son. He did not agree with some of Channon's actions, especially the fact that she often brought the children to his house when she went on dates. However, investigators gained a personal view of Channon and her family after speaking with him, her children, and her relatives and friends. After the investigation, detectives had a complete picture of Channon in her life. The kindness and concern of those who attended Channon's funeral on December 10, 2011, showed that she was an intelligent and sincere person. She was buried in a cemetery in Orlando. Investigators quickly searched for the killer after the incident attracted public attention. The suspect at that time was her ex-husband, Clay Starbuck. Police needed to verify his alibi to eliminate him as a suspect. When the first fingerprint results came back, detectives discovered that the fingerprints did not match any at the scene. Therefore, the police needed to gather more information about Clay Starbuck. They also took samples from his cell phone, laptop, and personal diary. At the same time, they also considered the possibility that other people were involved in the murder. After a thorough examination of Starbuck's cell phone, detectives added several names to the suspect list. One of them was someone Channon had connected with through a dating site. They discovered that a man named Tom Walker had scheduled a date with Channon on December 5th, a few hours before her death. They also discovered that Tom and Channon had been chatting openly and exchanging photos. Tom had asked Channon to pose for a photo with an adult toy, but she refused. Interestingly, Channon's body was later found in the exact pose Tom had mentioned. Tom was found within an hour and immediately became a suspect. He explained his activities on the day of Channon's death, which was confirmed by co-workers and surveillance cameras. John Wilson then scheduled a date with Channon on December 1st. It was clear from their correspondence that he was not looking for a serious relationship. However, the truth is that John Wilson used a fake name. His real name is John Kinlawn, who works in a completely different field and is married, so he had to keep it a secret. On the day of the incident, John Kinlawn postponed his morning meeting with Channon until later, citing a headache. In the end, the appointment did not take place. After his DNA sample was taken, he was released. His alibi was confirmed, even though his deception was revealed to his family. The investigation continued, and investigators uncovered some important evidence. When they searched Channon's phone, they asked the carrier for more information and discovered something significant. At 9:18 a.m. on December 1st, a 911 call was made from Channon's phone, but someone had deleted it from the call history. Thanks to a request from emergency services, investigators were able to retrieve the call. However, the call contained only crying and other noises before it was abruptly cut off. Investigators also discovered that after the initial call was unsuccessful, emergency services attempted to call back, but the call went to voicemail. GPS data from Channon's cell phone pinpointed her location at home on the day of her death. Notably, these events occurred after she dropped her children off at school and returned home. Therefore, the messages sent a few hours later could not have been from her. The perpetrator was trying to confuse the investigation. Additionally, this person had a close relationship with the Starbuck family. For example, he used a nickname for their youngest son in his correspondence. Upon closer examination of the information, Clay's statements became even more suspicious. He had a motive to end his ex-wife's life because he could not accept the reality of the divorce. Moreover, he had the perfect opportunity to do this because he knew her daily routine. To clarify the suspicion, the authorities decided to track Clay's car route again, this time using street surveillance camera recordings. The results showed that Clay's car was not broken down as he had claimed. Simultaneously, the results of a second DNA analysis from Channon's body matched exactly with Clay's sample. On the morning of December 1st, Clay sent a text message to his ex-wife, asking her to take the kids to school and saying that his car had broken down. While she was away, he entered her home and waited. During this time, he accessed her laptop and found personal correspondence that made him jealous and angry. When Channon returned home, a heated argument ensued that ended in violence. This explains why she was found in an unusual position. This may have been an act of revenge for her newly gained freedom. Clay then stayed at the house and impersonated Channon in text messages. It seems that he had long intended to harm his ex-wife. The words of a friend of Channon's took on new meaning for detectives. In one conversation, the friend mentioned that Clay and Channon's relationship was not normal. Channon confessed that she was fed up with Clay's constant control and criticism. She was afraid of divorce because she feared that he might one day hurt her. Between June and November 2011, Channon contacted the police several times, accusing her ex-husband of stalking her. She felt unsafe even in her own home and therefore did not trust anyone with a key. She eventually managed to obtain a restraining order against Clay, so their communication was limited to text messages. A careful examination of Channon's diary makes it clear that she was not only afraid of her ex-husband but also believed that he was turning the children against her. Clay fabricated lewd stories and portrayed her as promiscuous. The children's reaction to their father's arrest on February 6, 2012, is therefore not surprising. They refused to believe his involvement. The children were unfazed by the fact that a tracking program was found on Channon's laptop and a hard drive labeled Channon's desktop was found in Clay's home, along with printed correspondence. The older children doubted the authenticity of the DNA analysis, believing that the accusations against their father were unfounded and that the case was fabricated. However, the views of law enforcement and other relatives were different. The prosecution was convinced of Clay's guilt, relying on a large amount of physical and testimonial evidence. In June 2013, justice prevailed, and Clay Starbuck was convicted of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances and disrespect for human remains. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2015, Clay's attorney filed an appeal of the sentence, but it was denied. To this day, Clay remains behind bars at the Airway Heights Correctional Facility in Spokane County. Channon's loved ones mourn her sudden passing, but their hearts are even more broken by the thought that her children sided with their father. He was so obsessed with his ex-wife that, in his quest for revenge, he forgot the consequences, leaving his children orphaned. Everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Claire Bernal. Claire Bernal was born on August 18, 1983, in Groombridge, a small village on the border of Kent and East Sussex, England. She spent most of her childhood and teenage years there. Little is known about her parents. Claire was raised by her mother, Tricia Bernal. Her father, from whom her mother is divorced, was uninterested in Claire's upbringing and did not participate in her life. Claire was a sociable, cheerful, and open-minded girl. She attended St. Gregory's Catholic School, where she excelled academically, participated in dance, and developed a passion for fine arts. Later, she enrolled at Kent College, where she earned a bachelor's degree in science. Claire was a friendly and outgoing woman who easily became the center of attention in any group. She had many friends, and people always spoke highly of her. Despite her sociable nature, she was cautious and careful, avoiding bad habits and choosing her friends wisely. During her college years, she worked part-time as a makeup artist. This experience inspired her to pursue a career in the beauty industry. She completed specialized courses in cosmetology and makeup artistry, as well as learning the fundamentals of theatrical makeup. These skills led her to her dream job as a beauty and style consultant at the upscale store Knightsbridge, which had recently opened in the luxury department store Harvey Nichols. To take this job, Claire moved to London because rent in the capital was quite high, so she lived with two friends. Despite being new to the industry, Claire quickly became a favorite with her colleagues. She was the most knowledgeable about makeup and skin care, so she took the time to mentor newbies. Claire describes herself as detail-oriented, patient, friendly, and kind. Claire loves living in the capital, where there are many opportunities to showcase her talents, learn new skills, and gain experience. During her first few months at Harvey Nichols, Claire met Michael Peake, a senior security guard who was immediately drawn to her. He showed his interest through various gestures and was good-looking. However, Michael has a complicated past. He is a citizen of both the Czech Republic and Slovakia. He was a former soldier who deserted and moved to England to avoid military service. Michael has a wife, whom he is in the process of divorcing, and a young child. Michael speaks with a very strong regional accent. He is tall and athletic, smiling and joking frequently. Michael began pursuing Claire. For about a month, they chatted happily and interacted mainly at the department store where they worked. When Michael asked Claire out on a date, she happily agreed. Their first date was at a quaint London cafe, where they spent the evening talking about their lives and sharing personal stories. During the conversation, Michael revealed that he was married but expressed his intention to divorce his wife soon because he wanted to be with Claire forever. This unexpected confession made Claire feel a little uncomfortable, but she thought that he was probably just joking. When Claire shared everything with her mother, she felt unhappy that the person pursuing her daughter was a foreigner, 8 years older than her and already had a family. Claire's mother Tricia advised her daughter not to meet this man. However, Claire felt safe and reassured her mother that everything was fine. On the second date, Michael took Claire to an amusement park, gave her a beautiful bouquet of flowers, complimented her repeatedly, kissed her goodbye and confessed his love. Claire was surprised and wondered if Michael was joking. That evening, she called her mother to express her concerns. Once again, her mother asked her to stop seeing him. Claire admitted that his behavior was a bit strange, but she admitted that she liked Michael and wanted to get to know him. So Michael asked her out on another date a week later, which she agreed to. This time Michael confessed his love again and told Claire that he would never let her go again. This left Claire confused, and even a little scared. She decided that this would be their last date and that she would end the relationship. Their short-lived affair lasted less than a month, during which they only went out 3 times. However, that was enough for Michael to believe that Claire was now his. Michael went back to the Czech Republic for a few weeks to see his wife and settle their divorce, but he was unable to resolve the issue. During this time, Claire almost completely stopped thinking about him, moving on with her life, believing that Michael was part of her past. However, one evening, he called her, asking to meet him at the airport. When Claire refused, he insisted that he needed her help. Claire finally agreed to meet him and even offered to let him stay for a day, since he had mentioned that he had moved out of his rented apartment and could not move into his new one until the next day. After entering Claire's house, Michael said that he wanted to stay and live with her. Claire was scared and asked him to leave immediately. However, Michael refused. Claire threatened to call the police if Michael did not leave. Although he eventually left the apartment, he did not leave and remained sitting on the doorstep until morning. The next day at work, Claire explains to Michael that their relationship is over and that their previous 3 dates meant nothing. However, Michael disagrees. Michael continued to prove his true feelings. He brought a large bouquet of red roses to Claire's workplace, but she refused to accept them. Michael persisted and took Claire home later, where he sat outside her apartment all night. When the neighbor tried to kick him out, Michael threatened to harm Claire instead of breaking up with her. Michael's actions and behavior are a desire to control Claire, despite Michael's assertions of love. Claire calmly explains that she has no feelings for him and regrets their short-lived relationship, to which Michael responds by hugging her tightly. He whispers in her ear, insisting that she loves him but does not yet realize it. For 6 months, Claire endured relentless stalking and harassment from Michael. Despite reporting her to the police, no action was taken. At work, Michael lurked outside her store, monitoring Claire's every move and contacting her dozens of times a day via phone calls and text messages. Michael would confess his undying love, beg for forgiveness, and beg her to come back. However, when his attempts were rebuffed, he would resort to threats, insisting that they would eventually be together. Every time Claire changed her phone number, Michael would find a way to get her number within a few days. What scared her the most was that Michael knew her home address and was always outside her house. Even when she tried to move, Michael followed her and found out her new address, causing the harassment to continue. Michael thought they were still in love. He even counted the months since they first met. In Michael's messages to Claire, he mentioned that if Claire didn't belong to him, he would make sure that no one else could have her. Claire had difficulty concentrating at work and was afraid to go out in public. Even the sound of the phone ringing startled her. Over time, the situation got worse and Claire began having nightmares at night. The emotional damage was evident as she lost a significant amount of weight. She felt tired and lost her confidence and her usual outgoing demeanor. Encouraged by her mother, friends, and co-workers, Claire finally decided to report her situation to her employer. She confided in the head of security at the mall. This man, who had experience in law enforcement, took Claire's concerns seriously and conducted a thorough investigation. He interviewed other employees and carefully reviewed the mall's surveillance footage, gathering evidence that showed that Claire was indeed being stalked by Michael. The security manager transferred Michael to another part of the store. However, this change did not significantly improve the situation. Michael continued to spend most of his time waiting outside the store, monitoring Claire's actions. Because Michael failed to perform his duties, the store management had to fire him. Despite this, Michael continued to harass Claire. Claire decided to report Michael to the police. When questioned by the police, Michael denied any wrongdoing, claiming that his intentions were sincere and that he only wanted to make it up to Claire so they could get back together. He insisted he had not threatened Claire, but his tone could have been misinterpreted. However, the police did not speak to Claire's colleagues and flatmates, who witnessed the incident and knew Michael had been stalking Claire for months and repeatedly threatening to kill her. The police treated the situation as a casual affair, finding no threat to Claire's life or health. The police did not conduct a risk assessment and Michael was only given a fine and a warning. He was also banned from the shopping center where she worked and ordered to stay away from her. A day after being questioned and notified of the ban on approaching Claire, Michael was back at her house, peering through the windows. When Claire saw him, she called the police. However, by the time the officers arrived, Michael had left the scene and they took no action against him. Claire continued to report her harassment by Michael to the police on June 10, 2005, saying that he had violated the no-contact order. However, when the police arrived, Michael was gone and no action was taken against him. Michael was eventually arrested. He cooperated with the police, surrendered calmly, and was handcuffed without resistance. After his arrest, he was charged with stalking and harassment. Michael spent a week in jail before being released on bail. The trial was scheduled for August 31, 2005, but before the trial, Claire decided to go on vacation. She went to a famous Italian resort with her mother and a friend, where they spent time enjoying the warm sea. The holiday was over. When she returned to London, she was surprised to find that Michael had stopped following her. He had disappeared. Feeling extremely relieved, she let down her guard. Michael returned to his hometown, where he spent every day at the shooting range, honing his shooting skills. He underwent training and obtained a license to purchase a pistol. Michael then brought the weapon into the UK with him and avoided all contact with Claire before their scheduled court hearing. During the hearing, he remained calm, pleading guilty and apologizing, claiming that he had no intention of causing harm. As a result, Michael was released again, without facing any real punishment. The next 2 weeks passed in silence, with Claire thinking that Michael would not bother her again. On September 13, 2005, Claire had a date with her new boyfriend that evening. She was in a good mood, chatting happily with a coworker, telling her about her plans when she heard a strange sound in the store from the entrance. Michael had been working as a security guard here for a long time, so he entered the building without being detected. Claire noticed something was wrong with her friend's expression, but before she could react, a shot was fired. Michael shot Claire point-blank in the back of the head, then fired 3 more bullets into her face as she fell to the floor. The gunshots caused widespread panic in the store, with people screaming, running, and looking for cover. Thinking that the shooter would come out of the lobby and start shooting randomly at customers, everyone prepared for the worst. Instead, Michael fired another shot into the ceiling, then pressed the barrel of the gun to his temple and pulled the trigger, instantly ending his life. Michael has been stalking Claire for almost a year, making her life miserable, and now he has brutally ended it. Michael has fulfilled his dark promise and cannot bear the thought of living without her. When paramedics and police arrived on the scene, they found the aftermath of that evening was devastating. Claire's mother, Trisha Bernal, had attended her sister's birthday party and returned home late. When she met police at the front door, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. She was told that her daughter Claire had been shot and killed. Trisha Bernal was shocked when she heard the news. Michael had asked a law student working at the department store about the potential punishment for the crime a few months earlier, which was then known to colleagues, including Claire. Claire reported her concerns to the police, fearing for her life, but no action was taken. The crime was largely due to police negligence, despite Claire's repeated pleas for help. Michael was arrested twice but released on bail, breaching a no-contact order, threatening Claire and consulting a lawyer about the punishment. However, the police felt this was not enough to jail him. He had the opportunity to leave the country, buy a weapon and return to commit the murder. There was crucial evidence, testimony from co-workers, roommates, and others who had heard Michael's threats against Claire, but this evidence was ignored by the police. It was only when Michael killed Claire and then committed suicide that the police realized the severity of the situation and the countless mistakes that had occurred. Claire's mother Trisha decided not to let this go and to seek justice. She joined forces with other grieving families who had lost loved ones in similar circumstances. Together, they launched a national program to help victims of stalking. As a result of their efforts, the law was changed and stalking was reclassified as a criminal offense. In 2012, a new law was passed that banned stalking completely. A helpline was also set up for victims who did not receive adequate support and protection from the police.